The story begins at the imposing gates of the Yi family mansion, where a young man, Xiu Xian, sits quietly, his demeanor heavy with dejection. His mind drifts, attempting to make sense of the strange twist his life has taken. Once an ordinary man in the modern world, he now inhabits a body bearing his own name but belonging to a world unlike his own. This body, as he learns from fragmented memories, belonged to the illegitimate son of the Yi family head. A timid and forsaken child, the boy grew up motherless and unrecognized by his father. Stripped of any familial pride, he wasn't even allowed to bear the family name. In this world, part of the martial-centric Long-Wind Kingdom, his lack of spiritual roots left him incapable of cultivating martial arts, branding him a useless outcast and an easy target for ridicule within the mansion. The boy's tragic life reached a grim climax when he fell into a river, nearly drowning. That moment marked the entry of Xiu Xian's soul into this world, merging with the boy's lifeless body. As Xiu Xian reflects on this grim tale, piecing together what memories he can, he feels a sudden weight on his shoulder. Startled, he turns to see a burly man glaring down at him. The man's tone is derisive as he addresses him. His words sting, a sharp reminder of the boy's past. He speaks about Xiu Xian's mother in cruel terms, mocking her unknown whereabouts. Soon, two more men join in, circling him like vultures. Their words grow harsher, the insults more cutting, with crude jests about his mother's supposed background. Their laughter echoes, each deals a blow to Xiu Xian's pride. In the midst of their ridicule, Xiu Xian does something unexpected. He raises his head, his voice steady as he addresses them directly. His words are biting, sharp, and confident. The laughter stops abruptly, the bullies exchanging bewildered glances. They mutter among themselves, disbelief plain on their faces. The timid boy they once knew couldn't possibly speak like this. Yet Xiu Xian continues, his expression unyielding as he repeats himself, this time slower and firmer. The insult lands with precision, and their confidence falters. One of them, angered, grabs him by the collar. Threats spill from his lips, but Xiu Xian finds himself unable to fight back. His new body is too frail, his limbs heavy and uncooperative. A commanding voice cuts through the tension. The bullies turn to see a young girl approaching, her presence immediately altering the dynamic. Recognizing her, they hesitate, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. The girl scolds them sharply, reminding them of their place and warning them of potential consequences if they continue their harassment. Her name is Yi Qifeng, a 16-year-old apprentice chef whose culinary skills have earned her favor with the family matriarch. Reluctantly, the men back off, but not without throwing veiled threats over their shoulders. They grumble among themselves as they leave, their bravado diminished. Yi Qifeng watches them retreat before turning her attention to Xiu Xian. She kneels, extending a hand toward him, her expression warm and concerned. Her voice is gentle as she asks if he's all right. Xiu Xian stares at her hand for a moment, the memories of the body's previous owner surfacing. He recalls that she is the only person in the household who has shown him kindness, perhaps because her lowly position gives her a unique understanding of his struggles. He accepts her hand, allowing her to help him to his feet. As their hands meet, a strange sensation ripples through him. A translucent interface materializes before his eyes, displaying an unexpected message. The activation of something called the *idol disciple system. The message explains its purpose, allowing him to recruit disciples and earn experience points passively. Xiu Xian reads the details carefully, a glimmer of excitement breaking through his initial disbelief. If this system works as described, it could transform his fortunes. Lost in thought, he barely notices Yi Qifeng speaking to him. Her curious tone pulls him back to reality. She asks what he's staring at so intently. An idea sparks in Xiu Xian's mind as he looks at her, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. Without warning, he declares his intention to make her his first disciple. Yi Qifeng pauses, processing his words before breaking into a light-hearted laugh. Amused, she remarks on his sudden change in demeanor, teasing him for his earlier fear. Her tone is playful as she questions who should really be the disciple in this situation. Still smiling, she waves dismissively, agreeing in jest to his proposal before mentioning she needs to return to the kitchen. She leaves with an air of cheerfulness, her words lingering as Xiu Xian watches her retreat. His mind races with possibilities, the system's presence stirring a newfound determination within him. As Yi Qifeng walks away, Xiu Xian watches her retreat with a soft smile. Her cheerful energy lingers in the air, a rare glimmer of warmth in the otherwise harsh household. Suddenly, an unfamiliar force envelops him, swirling dramatically like a fiery vortex. The energy is vivid and intense, leaving him momentarily breathless. The system interrupts his amazement with a chime, informing him of a new development. Actions performed by disciples, it explains, grant him experience points. As an example, the system illustrates Yi Qifeng boiling eggs, each bubble of steam translating into a steady increase in his points. The absurdity of it all amuses Xiu Xian, and he imagines the eggs cooking like tiny beacons of his future success. The aroma wafts from the kitchen, comforting and promising. A fellow chef's voice calls out, asking if the eggs are ready. With her usual cheer, Yi Qifeng replies that they are and moves quickly to serve them. Xiu Xian lingers by the doorway, observing her dash off with the steaming bowl. The system chimes again, congratulating him on the increase in experience points. His excitement grows as the points accumulate steadily, like a bank account receiving deposits. In the kitchen, Yi Qifeng continues her work, chopping vegetables with precision, stir-frying dishes with skill, and plating them beautifully. Nearby, a group of chefs gossip idly, their tone dripping with scorn. One mocks her diligence, calling her foolish for working so hard without extra pay. Another sneers in agreement, remarking that her effort makes their laziness easier. Back near the doorway, Xiu Xian experiences a sudden surge of energy. The rapid gain in experience points creates a dazzling glow around him, momentarily blinding anyone who happens to glance his way. He notices Yi Qifeng's skills visibly improving, her movements quicker, her confidence more pronounced. Watching her dedication, Xiu Xian muses about how effortless it is to gain progress now compared to the grind of his university days. If only grades had risen this easily, he thinks, he might have become a professor. The system's voice interrupts his thoughts, announcing that he has reached the beginner level in the idle disciple system. The glow surrounding him intensifies, lighting up the area like golden sunlight. He chuckles to himself, encouraging Yi Qifeng silently to keep going. The more she works, the more experience he gains, and the absurdity of it all makes him laugh harder. The system offers him a choice now, to specialize in a skill of idle living. Options flash before him: sewing, calligraphy, music, architecture, fishing, blacksmithing, and medicine. After a moment of deliberation, he settles on fishing, reasoning that it might be the most enjoyable. Soon after, Xiu Xian finds himself by a serene river near the mansion, a fishing rod in hand. However, reality sets in quickly. The stillness of the activity grates on his nerves. The sun beats down, a bird perches mockingly on his hat, and his basket remains empty. Fishing, he realizes, requires effort and patience, qualities he is reluctant to expend. His mood sours until the water ripples unexpectedly. A fish has taken the bait, and his eyes light up with excitement. Shouting in triumph, he jerks the rod, sending his hat flying and startling the bird. The fish thrashes as he reels it in, and he prepares to toss it triumphantly into his basket. But just as victory seems certain, a sharp scream pierces the air. Startled, Xiu Xian hesitates, and the fish slips free, smacking his face before flopping back into the water. Stunned and irritated, he mutters complaints about being disturbed, yet the cry lingers in his mind. It wasn't just noise. It was a desperate plea for help. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit, abandoned house nearby, chaos unfolds. Yi Qifeng is thrown against a wall with brutal force, the impact enough to leave cracks in the plaster. Despite the violence, she emerges relatively unscathed, save for a small cut on her lip. She wipes the blood away, her expression calm and steady as she confronts her attackers. Her voice cuts through the tension, questioning their actions with quiet resolve. The culprits are no strangers. They're the same group of men who bullied Xiu Xian earlier. Their leering smiles and arrogant postures betray their cruel intentions. But Yi Qifeng, though cornered, refuses to show fear, her calm defiance unsettling them as the confrontation escalates. The thuggish men from earlier in the day return, their presence oppressive and vengeful. The leader, his face twisted into a malicious grin, steps forward, his intent clear. His demeanor drips with mockery as he scolds Yi Qifeng, accusing her of meddling in matters beyond her station. He commands his companions to teach her a harsh lesson, his grubby hands reaching toward her with cruel purpose. Before he can act, a sharp, decisive kick lands squarely on his face. The force is so overwhelming that it sends him hurtling through a nearby window, the glass shattering around him in a spectacular display. Stepping into view with a calm but imposing presence is Xiu Xian. His leg remains extended in a flawless kick, exuding both power and grace. The fluidity of his movements captures the attention of everyone present, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. The remaining thugs falter, their confidence shaken. One stammers as sweat trickles down his face, attempting to mask his fear with bravado, accusing Xiu Xian of ambushing their boss. Xiu Xian pays him no mind, casually shaking his foot as though brushing off dirt. He murmurs to himself, marveling at how much lighter his legs feel now, the newfound strength coursing through his body evidence of his recent progress. The thugs, humiliated but unwilling to back down, snarl like cornered beasts. One lunges at Xiu Xian in a desperate attempt to regain control, aiming a punch at his head. But Xiu Xian moves with remarkable speed, sidestepping effortlessly. The attacker stumbles, his momentum carrying him forward like a frog leaping into thin air, bewildered as he crashes awkwardly to the ground. From behind, Xiu Xian's voice rings out, tinged with amusement as he remarks on his improved speed. The thug freezes, his fear palpable as beads of sweat cascade down his face. His companion, desperate to rally, shouts that Xiu Xian's status as the illegitimate son of the family head shouldn't intimidate them. He urges his comrade to attack, trying to reignite their resolve. The two thugs coordinate their efforts, charging at Xiu Xian from opposite directions. Their shouts of determination echo in the space as they close in, certain that this time, they have him cornered. Xiu Xian, however, remains entirely unperturbed. With a smirk, he taunts them, challenging their bravado. At the last moment, he sidesteps once more, allowing the two to collide headfirst in a comedic display of clumsiness. The collision leaves the thugs momentarily dazed. Frustration boils over as they argue, blaming each other for their failure. Undeterred, they regroup and charge again, but Xiu Xian effortlessly ducks, causing one thug to accidentally strike the other across the face. Seizing the opportunity, Xiu Xian delivers a powerful kick to one of the thugs, landing a direct blow to his groin. The impact is devastating, the force resonating with an almost palpable intensity. The thug collapses, clutching his groin, his face contorting in agony. His strangled cry is pitiful, and the onlookers, had there been any, might wince in sympathy. The remaining thug, seeing the scene unfold, loses what little courage he has left and retreats, hurling a hollow threat over his shoulder as he flees. Xiu Xian watches the fleeing figure with a lazy wave, his voice laced with amusement as he invites them to return anytime. Behind him, Yi Qifeng's voice cuts through the aftermath, her tone a mix of disbelief and curiosity. She questions his identity, unable to reconcile the timid man she once knew with the warrior who just bested void stage beginners. Her skepticism grows as she recalls his earlier remarks about taking her as his disciple, something she had dismissed as nonsensical rambling born of fear. Her thoughts shift as the realization dawns that there is more to Xiu Xian than she had assumed. Without hesitation, she drops to her knees before him, her voice filled with earnestness as she seeks his forgiveness for her earlier ignorance. She humbly requests his guidance and protection, her sincerity evident in her demeanor. For a moment, Xiu Xian is caught off guard by her gesture, but he quickly composes himself. Offering her a gentle smile, he extends his hand to help her to her feet, reassuring her that such formalities aren't necessary. After all, she was the one who had stood up for him earlier. Together, They begin walking back toward the Yi mansion, their conversation flowing naturally. As they talk, Xiu Xian's curiosity grows. He inquires about spiritual roots, asking if it is truly impossible for someone born without them to awaken such powers. Yi Qifeng confirms this with a serious nod, though her own understanding of the phenomenon seems to leave room for mystery. The girl speaks with a calm conviction, her tone unwavering as she explains. In the entire history of the Longwen Kingdom, there has never been an exception. She gestures toward Xiu Xian and adds with a faint smile that today is different. He has broken that rule. Her voice carries a blend of praise and teasing as she continues, noting that if the household discovers that the once useless outcast with no potential has awakened spiritual roots, their attitudes will change. Even his unmarried status as he approaches 20 would no longer matter. Her words leave Xiu Xian flustered, his face reddening as he mutters a barely audible thanks. The two walk together until they reach the Yi mansion. As they ascend the stairs, a hand shoots out unexpectedly, pinching Yi Qifeng's ear. Startled, she yelps in pain, turning to find the culprit, Steward John, the mansion's enforcer. John's face is contorted with anger as he scolds her for running around recklessly. Yi Qifeng squirms, pleading with him to release her, but his grip tightens. His scolding grows harsher, his voice filled with disdain as he accuses her of troublemaking. He mocks her achievements, saying the matriarch's praise for her cooking won't protect her from being punished. Before he can continue, another hand clamps down on his wrist, forcing him to release her. Xiu Xian steps forward, his presence radiating an uncharacteristic coolness. His grip on John's hand is firm, almost unyielding, as he asks in a low, steely voice who dares to bully his disciple. The steward shrieks in pain, his voice breaking as he begs for mercy. Before the situation can escalate further, a sharp, haughty voice cuts through the tension. Both Xiu Xian and Yi Qifeng turn to see the second wife of the Yi family approaching, her expression severe and scowling. Beside her stands her son, Yi Ba, grinning with malicious delight. The second wife wastes no time attacking with words, accusing Xiu Xian of causing trouble both inside and outside the mansion. Her voice drips with contempt as she questions his shame. Xiu Xian, arms crossed and unimpressed, calmly points out that her steward was the one bullying Yi Qifeng. His defense is pointed and confident, challenging her to address the steward's behavior first. The second wife's face darkens, clearly not expecting his defiance. She snaps at him, her anger rising as she questions his newfound audacity. Before she can unleash further insults, Yi Ba steps forward, his arrogant demeanor amplifying the tension. He mocks Xiu Xian, calling him useless trash and a disgrace to the family. With a sneer, he demands that Xiu Xian be thrown out of the mansion. The second wife hesitates, knowing she lacks the authority to act decisively without the family head's approval. Begrudgingly, she settles on docking Xiu Xian's pay for a few months, her frustration barely concealed. As Xiu Xian and Yi Qifeng leave, the steward mutters bitterly, nursing his injured hand and wondering how the seemingly weak young man has become so strong. Later, in the study, Yi Ba and his mother plot their next move. Yi Ba fumes with anger, his pride wounded by the public confrontation. He speculates about the possibility of Xiu Xian awakening spiritual roots, a thought that unsettles him. The second wife, however, remains calm, dismissing the idea as unlikely. She insists that Xiu Xian's recent strength must be due to basic training, nothing extraordinary. Still, her expression hardens as she plans to monitor him closely, determined to maintain their power within the household. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Yi Qifeng prepares meals for the household with an air of quiet determination. Her movements are precise and fluid, her skill evident in the way she handles the knife and ingredients. A group of young men gathers outside the kitchen, watching in awe as she works with an intensity that borders on intimidating. Whispered comments pass among them, their initial mockery fading into uneasy admiration as they sense her focused energy. Xiu Xian, lounging elsewhere, enjoys the peace while the system's notifications flood in. It informs him of Yi Qifeng's promotion to apprentice level and his own advancement to the great success stage in the void tier. The system announces new abilities, including a skill called devouring attributes asterisk, which allows him to absorb skills and attributes from food. The possibilities intrigue him, and he muses on how much easier life has become with these unexpected advantages. At a local bookstore, Xiu Xian browses the shelves with a determined air. The shopkeeper greets him, masking his skepticism behind a polite smile. Xiu Xian requests a high-grade technique manual, startling the older man, who struggles to reconcile the request with Xiu Xian's reputation. The shopkeeper attempts to hand him a beginner's manual, but he slammed 3 silver ingots onto the counter. The shopkeeper's eyes lit up brighter than the morning sun. All sense of caution vanished as he practically leapt forward. His attitude completely changed, and exclaims, asking why didn't he say so earlier. Lu Yunshu, standing behind him, was speechless at the man's sudden transformation. The shopkeeper, now overflowing with enthusiasm, quickly exclaimed, saying that he'll get him the most powerful technique they have, as he darted off. Lu Yunshu grabbed a high-level manual from a top shelf, muttering to herself, in all her life, she's never seen someone so ambitious. She just hopes he doesn't end up biting off more than he can chew. She handed the manual to Xiu Xian, who examined it skeptically. This is a Tier 1 technique manual, isn't it? He asked. With a mix of sincerity and mischief, Lu Yunshu gave him one final piece of advice, saying that if you manage to master even this before he dies, he can come find her. As long as she's alive, she'll keep her word. She smirked and added confidently that she'll even do a headstand and wash her hair in the middle of the street if he succeeds. Xiu Xian raised an eyebrow. Smirking, he asks if she's sure about that. He turned to the shopkeeper. You heard that too, right? The shopkeeper nodded vigorously, confirming her words. Lu Yunshu crossed her arms and declared that she'll stake her life on it, confident that there's no way he can do it. Xiu Xian calmly rolled the manual into a tube, his expression unshaken. All right then, don't regret it later, he said with a casual confidence. Lu Yunshu froze for a moment, blinking in confusion. She wonders what's he planning to do now, caught off guard by his sudden air of certainty. Xiu Xian grabbed the technique manual and, to everyone's shock, shoved it straight into his mouth. The onlookers froze in disbelief. The bookstore owner's jaw dropped wide enough to fit a whole egg, while Lu Yunshu stared at him, her eyes round as saucers. What are you doing? The owner stammered, his voice trembling. But before anyone could stop him, Xiu Xian had already swallowed the entire book, as they watched him gulp it down. The astonished shopkeeper muttered to himself that he supposes anything on earth can be eaten if you're determined enough, but still, eating a book? He thinks that this guy might be the most bizarre person in Long Wind Kingdom. Lu Yunshu and the shopkeeper exchanged incredulous looks, still struggling to process what they had just seen. Xiu Xian exhaled a satisfied breath and casually gave a thumbs up, as if rating the book's flavor. His nonchalant reaction left the other two completely speechless. But then the effects kicked in. Xiu Xian's face turned pale, and his body trembled uncontrollably as if he were about to throw up. His knees buckled and he let out a strange sound, somewhere between a gag and a sigh, then without warning, he exhaled a fragrant puff of smoke. The shopkeeper blinked, utterly dumbfounded. Before they could react further, Xiu Xian's body began to radiate a glowing green energy, like he was on the verge of ascending to another realm. The surge of power forced the others to step back as waves of energy burst from his body. Suddenly, his legs kicked off the ground like missiles, and he shot out of the bookstore, disappearing in a blur. Papers flew everywhere. And the shopkeeper mutters that if debtors could move that fast, no one would ever collect anything. Outside, Xiu Xian dashed across rooftops, his speed leaving trails of dust and debris behind him. Whoa! This is amazing, he shouted, leaping from one building to the next like a squirrel on caffeine. Within moments, he landed back at the bookstore, skidding to a halt in front of the stunned shopkeeper and Lu Yunshu. The shopkeeper's face turned as purple as an eggplant as he stammered the fact that he really mastered the technique. His disbelief turned to muttering, saying that this is more unbelievable than the idea of their ancestors crawling out of the ground. He gawked at Xiu Xian, asking in shock, how could someone without spiritual roots instantly grasp a first-level technique manual, which requires such advanced body and energy training? Lu Yunshu sighed in resignation. Her voice rang out clearly as she admitted her defeat. Nearby, a large bucket of water had been placed on the street. Lu Yunshu flipped herself into a headstand, ready to fulfill her bet. Water splashed everywhere as she tilted forward, preparing to wash her hair upside down. The shopkeeper, flustered and red-faced, quickly grabbed her legs and tried to stop her, saying that she can't do this. Lu Yunshu replied firmly that if he thinks so, he should let go of her already. Around them, a crowd had gathered, drawn by the commotion. People whispered excitedly among themselves, asking what's going on here. Someone says that he heard she lost a bet. Someone else asks what kind of bet did she lose. The former explains that she bet that the brat couldn't learn a first-level technique manual in one go. Hearing this, others in the crowd began to chime in, shocked by the implication. They ask in disbelief if that means he did learn it, thinking that that should be impossible. Some also say that he mastered it in just a few moments. The crowd buzzed with disbelief, their curiosity and amazement growing with each passing second. Xiu Xian sat down beside Lu Yunshu and spoke calmly. All right. Hearing his voice, she looked up at him. Her curiosity piqued. Xiu Xian continued wanting to ask her something. He asks if she has any special skills or hobbies. Lu Yunshu, still in her headstand position, pondered for a moment, thinking that this guy is so strange. She wonders why would he suddenly ask her that. After a moment, she stood upright, tied her hair neatly, and walked with him back into the bookstore. Facing him directly, she answered that she doesn't have any martial arts training. Her only hobbies are calligraphy and painting. Xiu Xian smiled and said casually that that's enough. He looked her straight in the eye and extended an invitation to officially become his disciple. He added that they should just forget about the bet from earlier, saying that it doesn't matter anymore. Lu Yunshu raised an eyebrow and asked bluntly, what is he planning to teach her? Is it martial arts? Instead of replying, Xiu Xian turned and walked away, his figure exuding quiet confidence. As he left, he threw back a single remark that she just needs to focus on calligraphy and painting and leave the rest to him. Lu Yunshu stood there, watching his departing silhouette, and couldn't help but think that he's such a strange master. As Xiu Xian leisurely made his way back to the mansion, the system appeared with a notification. New disciple successfully recruited. Lu Yunshu, specialty, calligraphy and painting. Current stage, void beginner. Xiu Xian read the system's information while walking, musing to himself that this new disciple isn't bad. He then glanced at the manuals in his hands, thinking that he's already consumed a few of these. If only the cooldown for devouring attributes was shorter, that would be perfect. With that thought, he shoved several more books into his mouth like they were snacks. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as he felt a surge of realization. But before he could act on it, a leopard-like muscular man with sharp green eyes and a beast-like presence launched a sneak attack, causing a small explosion. Dust and debris flew everywhere as the powerful strike connected with the back of Xiu Xian's head. In the distance, two young men watched with anticipation, one in a red robe, the other in a purple one. The man in purple frowned and asks his companion that didn't he say this guy was weak and would go down with just one punch? Why did he even bother having him release the void intermediate beast? The man in red, Yi Ba, smirked confidently and tells him not to worry, saying that they got this under control. He reassures him that he'll make sure he's paid handsomely after this. The man in purple hesitated, thinking that this still feels risky. He asks what is he supposed to say when he goes back. Yi Ba waved him off, his tone smug, telling him to relax. Since the beast was unregistered, if anyone asks, he can just say it caused havoc so he had to kill it. But unfortunately, A bystander didn't survive. Case closed. But before they could pat themselves on the back for their clever scheme, a calm voice spoke from behind them, asking, "Who's dead now?" Both Yi Ba and Tran prison guard froze. Their faces turned pale as if they'd seen a ghost. Turning around, they saw Xiu Xian standing there, completely unharmed. The man in purple couldn't believe his eyes. He wonders how this brat survived an attack from the void intermediate beast without a scratch. Yi Ba's confidence shattered as he stammered, saying that this is impossible. How is he still alive? Sweat poured down his face. He wonders how Xiu Xian managed to sneak up behind him so quickly. He stared at Xiu Xian. Disbelief etched on his face, thinking that this is impossible. He's at the first stage, and it took him 10 years to reach it, he muttered to himself. His voice trembling, he turned to Yi Ba, the self-assured second young master in red, and yelled, asking if he miscalculate. With this level of agility, how could he possibly be a trash without spiritual roots? Yi Ba, equally shocked, was frozen in place, unable to voice out a response out of shock. Completely fed up, Xiu Xian, his face darkening with anger, turned to Yi Ba and asked coldly if the incident where he fell into the river was his doing. Yi Ba's pale complexion turned even whiter. His legs trembled uncontrollably, and his words failed him. Xiu Xian continues, saying that he tried to harm him time and time again. His tone icy, he asks if he's tired of living. Yi Ba, now on the verge of collapse, suddenly remembered his supposed trump card. He shouts in panic, asking about the whereabouts of the void beast. The man in purple hesitantly pointed toward a distant area, his finger trembling. Looking over there, Yi Ba followed his gaze and gasped. All he saw was a pair of motionless purple hindquarters sticking out from the bushes. With a leopard head slumped beside it. "It's dead," Yi Ba stammered in disbelief. Thinking that this has to be a dream, suddenly, a purple blur shot forward. The purple robe man rushes toward Xiu Xian, saying that if the beast failed, he'll have to finish this himself. Xiu Xian stood calmly, smirking. Xiu Xian exclaims that he's at the first stage. Killing him should net him some decent experience points. The man's eyes widened. What nonsense is this? A brat who awakened his spiritual roots just a few days ago, spouting such arrogance. He launched into his 10-fist strike technique, sending a flurry of powerful punches toward Xiu Xian while continuing to mock him. He says that it took him over a decade to master this level. Does he think he can stand against him? Xiu Xian casually caught the first punch with one hand, countered with an elbow to the chest, and then followed up with another attack. The impact sent Tranti Nuk stumbling backward. Xiu Xian, seizing the moment, stepped forward and landed a clean punch squarely on his opponent's face. Another blow followed. This time, the man was sent flying several meters, crashing into the ground like a broken kite. He hit the dirt with a heavy thud, leaving cracks in the ground as dust rose around him. Lying there, beaten and battered, Warden Chen finally understood the meaning of regret. Shaking, he thought to himself, what kind of basic moves are these? How is he this strong? Pressing his trembling hands against the ground, he cursed under his breath, thinking that damn Yi Ba lied to him. He told him this was just some weakling who awakened spiritual roots a few weeks ago. Xiu Xian stood still, watching the battered and struggling figure of Warden Chen as he tried to crawl back to his feet. Xiu Xian couldn't help but think that these basic manuals for movement techniques, kicking techniques, and punching techniques are really something. Turns out the books he ate earlier are proving extremely useful in battle. Meanwhile, the man's face turned as pale as his purple robe. Inwardly, he was panicking. He thinks that he can't beat him. He needs to escape, summoning the last of his strength. He took a deep breath and launched himself into the air, using all his energy for a desperate burst of agility. With a whoosh, he shot forward like an arrow, his figure quickly disappearing into the distance. Feeling confident, he thought there's no way Xiu Xian can catch up to him now. He's already put so much distance between us. Even if he's fast, it's too late. But suddenly, a voice sounded softly behind him asking where is he trying to go. He froze midair, his body stiff as a board. Turning slightly, he saw Xiu Xian right behind him. Before he could react, Xiu Xian gently pressed a hand on his head and shoved him into the ground with a resounding thud. The impact kicked up dust and debris, and the man's battered body bounced slightly before hitting the ground again. This time, Xiu Xian's usual calm demeanor had vanished, replaced by an icy gaze brimming with killing intent. His thoughts raced. He thinks that this isn't good. This blow seriously injured him. He can't even move anymore. Death is creeping closer. Out of desperation, he screamed for mercy. He starts begging for his life, clinging to the last thread of hope. He added hastily that he is an officer of the authorities. If he kills him, he'll face endless trouble later. Xiu Xian paused, clearly unimpressed, but inwardly admitted that this guy's quick to think on his feet. He's got a point. And just like that, Xiu Xian vanished without a word, leaving the man lying face down in the dirt. He exhaled shakily, assuming his bluff had worked, but just as he began to feel relief, two long legs appeared before him. Looking up, he saw Xiu Xian holding 3 bone claws in his hands, the ones he had taken from the defeated beast. The man's voice trembled as he stuttered, asking what is he planning to do. He threatened that killing him would only cause him trouble. Xiu Xian's gaze sharpened as he spoke slowly and deliberately that he claimed to be an officer of the authorities. Yet he's colluded with that Yi family dog. Not only has he plotted against him, but he also released a man-eating beast to attack him. He leaned closer, his voice cold and firm, declaring that today, he will die. With that, Xiu Xian tightened his grip on the bone claws and added that besides, didn't he and Yi Ba already plan to take his life? He's just returning the favor. Xiu Xian's aura surged, his killing intent radiating like a storm. His eyes burned brightly. No longer carrying his usual carefree demeanor, he spoke coldly, saying that he'll just say the beast killed him. The man's face turned ashen, his body trembling like a candle flickering in a hurricane. Wait a minute, he cried out in panic. Meanwhile, back at the Yi mansion, the cowardly Yi Ba was whispering urgently to his mother, Lu Shi. Recounting his recent escape, he tells her that if he hadn't sensed the situation going south and run early, he might not have made it. Yi Ba's eyes darted nervously, but they suddenly widened when he spotted someone walking by outside. It was Xiu Xian. Strolling slowly, his confident, sharp gaze sweeping past Yi Ba. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Yi Ba froze, his face pale as if he'd seen a ghost in broad daylight. Sweat poured down his temples. Lu Shi noticed and scolded him harshly. If he hadn't been lazy and scheming as a child, and if he had properly cultivated after stealing Xiu Xian's spiritual roots, he would have been at least at the 2nd stage by now. There would be no reason to fear that illegitimate brat. Her expression darkened as she added that there's no need to cower before him. Yi Ba nodded. Regaining some of his composure, he confirms that he indeed reported it. The authorities will charge him with murder and take him away. Lu Shi, however, poured cold water on his optimism, saying that he shouldn't count on it. She said sternly that he has already been outplayed. She's inquired with the Demon Suppression Department about Chen's autopsy. His body was covered in claw marks, clearly killed by the beast, which means that Xiu Xian is off the hook. Her face turned cruel as she declared that it's now certain that he's awakened his spiritual roots and his talent is extraordinary. They can't afford any delusions anymore. Her tone was icy as she made her decision. They must act before his strength surpasses the prefecture's strongest guard. For now, he should keep a close watch on him, and not let his guard down. Later, a servant was secretly observing Xiu Xian. To his surprise, Xiu Xian wasn't training or scheming but rather sitting leisurely in his courtyard, fishing in a small tub. Inside the tub were 3 lively fish, swimming in circles. Xiu Xian thought to himself that the system only said he can gain experience from fishing. It didn't say the fish had to come from a river, so surely fish he buys from the market and fish himself will work too, right? Chilling without a care, Xiu Xian reached into the tub as one of the fish bit his bait. Pulling it out, he grinned as the system notification appeared, +4 experience points. Excited, he exclaimed that it works. He finds this is amazing. The spying servant rushed back to report, "Young Master Yi Ba." He said breathlessly that for the past few days, Xiu Xian's been buying fish from the market and then fishing them out of a tub in his courtyard. Yi Ba frowned. His curiosity piqued. He asks if he hasn't been secretly training. The servant shook his head. Bowing slightly, he elaborates that aside from buying fish, he spends all day sitting in his courtyard, fishing. He hasn't seen him leave his sight even for a moment. Yi Ba clenched his fist, his anger boiling over. He wonders what is that brat up to, his grip on the chair tightening until it creaked loudly under the pressure. Yi Ba paced angrily, his mind racing. He thinks, how is it possible that without training his cultivation has advanced so rapidly? He must be hiding something. Determined, he muttered to himself that he had to figure this out. There's no way this makes sense. Instead of focusing on his own training, Yi Ba spent his time obsessing over Xiu Xian. A true mark of a petty schemer. Meanwhile, Xiu Xian was relaxing as usual. Reading the latest system notifications. Fishing skill upgraded to apprentice level. He now has a chance to catch fish with special attributes. The current fishing location no longer grants experience or skill upgrades. The system urges him to move to a higher level fishing spot. Xiu Xian pondered this. A higher level fishing spot. Huh. Just then, a servant arrived with a letter and handed it to him. Xiu Xian raised an eyebrow. A letter? For him? Someone actually wrote to him? He quickly took the letter, his excitement rising. Could it be a love letter? Maybe some maiden secretly admires him, he thought, but as he opened the letter, his face fell. The bold words at the top read, "Demon Suppression Department Recruitment Notice." Xiu Xian crumpled the letter in his hand and sneered, "Well played. Demon Suppression Department. Warden Chen just died at his hands, and now they're pulling this stunt. Even without evidence, they must hate him enough to grind his bones to dust," he smirked. His thoughts connect the dots. It's hard not to suspect Yi Ba and his scheming mother are behind this. Things are getting more and more interesting. Despite the clear danger, Xiu Xian couldn't help but be intrigued. Experience points delivered to his door, how could he refuse? Later, Xiu Xian spoke with Yi Qifeng about the letter. She asked curiously that if the Demon Suppression Department is holding a recruitment event, and he's been invited, why is still lounging around like this? She couldn't understand why her master didn't seem thrilled by the opportunity. Isn't being selected by the Demon Suppression Department a good thing? Why doesn't he look happy about it? Xiu Xian, still browsing through the system interface, replied without looking up. That with my status and reputation in the Yi mansion, does she really think something good like this would happen to him? Yi Qifeng leaned closer, staring at where Xiu Xian's fingers seemed to be pointing in the air. She admits that he makes a good point. But as always, she grew curious about Xiu Xian's mysterious gestures, so she asks about it. Xiu Xian waved her off, deflecting the question and saying that he doesn't know what level of opponents he'll face at the recruitment. So he needs to prepare thoroughly. Just then, the system displayed another notification, saying that disciple Yi Qifeng was promoted to head chef assistant. Her spiritual roots have awakened, and her unlocked skill is specialty cooking. Unique skill unlocked. Dishes infused with spiritual energy. When cooked with this technique, food grants special rewards to those who consume it. Xiu Xian blinked, a sly grin spreading across his face. Cooking spiritual dishes. This might be even more interesting than he thought. Yi Qifeng tilted her head, curious as ever. She asks her master what he's smiling about. The unique dishes that Yi Qifeng could now create had various effects, boosting attack power, defense, speed, and even perception. As her level increased, she would be able to craft even more extraordinary dishes, but these would require rare and valuable ingredients. After reading the system notification, Xiu Xian scratched his head and wondered how he's supposed to teach her skills. Suddenly, a small glowing white orb appeared, floating gently in the air. It emitted a famed aura of spiritual energy, causing Xiu Xian to let out a surprised "oh." He reached out with 2 fingers, lightly tapping the glowing orb. Is this some kind of skill point that needs to be transferred? He wondered aloud. Not knowing exactly what to do, Xiu Xian decided to follow his instincts, or rather, what he called ancestral guidance. If he doesn't know how it works, he'll just wing it, he muttered. With that, he gently pressed the glowing orb against Yi Qifeng's forehead. A soft green light flowed from the orb into her, and she blinked in surprise, her face turning as red as a ripe tomato. She looked up at Xiu Xian. Her cheeks flushed, and stammered, asking her master why he's poking her forehead like that. Before Xiu Xian could respond, Yi Qifeng froze for a moment, her expression shifting as an overwhelming sense of power coursed through her. Her mind was suddenly flooded with vivid images of recipes and techniques. She gasped. She's comprehended the recipe for braised beef tendons, and the formula for vinegar braised fish, and the recipe for supreme spiritual pot stew. Without warning, Yi Qifeng dashed off, leaving a trail of smoke behind her. She shouted as she ran that she had to cook these dishes right away before she forget. Meanwhile, the system displayed another notification that disciple Lu Yunshu was promoted to apprentice level. New specialization unlocked. Scroll creation. Effect. Lu Yunshu can now create special scrolls with unique effects. Unlocked. Camouflage scroll. Use this scroll to blend seamlessly into your surroundings. Xiu Xian sighed with admiration, thinking that his disciples are working so hard. He might have to step up his game, he said with a smirk. The system chimed again. Subsystem unlocked. Disciples' prepared items can now be stored in the subsystem inventory for his use at any time. Time passed quickly, and the day of the Demon Suppression Department's recruitment arrived. Xiu Xian prepared to set off, accompanied by his 2 disciples, who came to see him off. At the bridge leading out of the town, Xiu Xian turned to them and says that this is far enough. They should go back to their own work now. His farewell was resolute, his back straight as he walked away. Yi Qifeng waved enthusiastically, calling out and telling him to be careful on his journey. Lu Yunshu, however, frowned. Her sharp eyes noticed something unusual. She asks Yi Qifeng, why is their master leaving with nothing? He hasn't even packed anything they've prepared for him. Yi Qifeng tilted her head. Equally puzzled, she replied that maybe he doesn't need it. Their master said that he put everything into some sort of thin box, and even told them to put anything useful into it. She doesn't really get it either. Their master is such a strange person. She sighed, but she guesses mysterious people have their own charm. The towering gates of the Demon Suppression Department loomed high, seemingly suspended in the blue sky. Xiu Xian had arrived at the entrance, where a gatekeeper greeted him, asking him to please present his recommendation letter. Xiu Xian handed over the letter. The gatekeeper opened it and began reading. His expression shifted as his eyes widened like saucers, his face turning red with anger. Asking if he's Xiu Xian? Hearing the name, another gatekeeper also grew agitated. Xiu Xian, unfazed, replied confidently that indeed that is him. Suddenly, he felt a surge of killing intent directed straight at him. The dark thoughts of the gatekeepers oozed out like venomous snakes coiling around them. One guard asks his colleagues in a low voice if he's the one who killed Elder Dong. Another replied that he's indeed the scum from the Yi family who did it. One gatekeeper clenched his fists, seething, and reassures them that they'll make sure he comes in but doesn't leave. Anyone who dares kill one of their colleagues won't live to see tomorrow. One of the guards, bolder than the rest, spat out. Why should they even wait? They should just deal with him right here and now. Their murderous intent thickened like a storm ready to strike. Xiu Xian's face darkened as he thought to himself that this has to be Yi Ba and his mother's doing. They must have spread the news to stir up trouble for him. Though the demon suppression department lacked concrete evidence, Xiu Xian understood the precarious situation he was in. He's somehow become the enemy of the entire department. It seems their plan is working perfectly. Suddenly, a voice called out, saying that the Lin family's young master has arrived. Everyone turned to see a tall youth with a sword slung over his shoulder approaching the gates. His casual demeanor exuded confidence, bordering on arrogance. Even Xiu Xian couldn't help but ask, "Who's that guy?" Someone nearby overheard Xiu Xian's question and decided to chime in, asking if it's his first time here. The speaker was Wu Changgun, an 18-year-old cultivator at the first stage. He enthusiastically introduced himself and offered to help Xiu Xian get familiar with things around here. Without waiting for Xiu Xian to respond, Wu Changgun launched into an explanation, saying that the guy he just saw is the Lin family's young master. They say he's quite the prodigy. Even though he started training years later than most, he's already reached the first stage at just 16 years old. Xiu Xian pointed at Wu Changgun, exclaiming with exaggerated enthusiasm that he's like an NPC who explains everything. Wu Changgun scratched his head, looking utterly confused. NPC? What's that supposed to mean? The Lin family young master was about to say something impressive, starting with, "My Lin family is." But, before he could finish, a long-haired youth with a sword at his waist casually brushed past him. Muttering for him to move aside, the shove nearly sent the Lin young master sprawling to the ground. The crowd burst into a flurry of whispers asking, "Who's that guy?" "Another sword-wielding stranger. This is getting interesting." Someone nearby explained that that's the young master of the Tian family, Tian Gongzi. He was the most outstanding competitor among the first-stage cultivators last year. He even managed to defeat a grand demon and obtained the spiritual pill it left behind. Hearing this, the Lin family's young master could only nod grudgingly. Though annoyed, he doesn't dare confront him. Tian Gongzi, basking in his superiority, smirked arrogantly and says that they're a bunch of trash. He says that this year, if he wins the Grand Demon's first-stage spiritual pill during the Demon Suppression Department competition, breaking through to the second stage will just be a matter of time. Suddenly, a towering bald man, at least 3 meters tall, appeared, carrying an enormous axe on his back. With a rumbling voice, the giant declared to get out of his way. Tian Gongzi's smug expression vanished instantly, replaced by a pale, frightened look. He quickly jumped to the side as the giant stomped down on the spot where he had just been standing. The ground cracked under the force, and it was clear that if Tian Gongzi had hesitated, he'd be flattened instantly. Xiu Xian, ever the spectator, watched from the sidelines and asked, "Who's that?" Even the arrogant Tian Gongzi had to back off. Wu Changgun looked at Xiu Xian like he was a clueless country bumpkin and eventually asks if he didn't know that guy either. Then launched into another explanation, saying that that's Beifong's most promising disciple of the last 15 years. Beifong Kulin Fu, the Northern Giant Axe. He's a monster, both in size and power, Wu Changgun continued. He's one of the very few people to have broken through to the second stage. Last year, he entered a second-stage demon lair and returned alive. It's said he's stepping into the realm of fearsome demonic creatures. The bald giant smiled, his bright white teeth contrasting with his shiny head. Just then, a voice called out, "Here comes Miss Zhao." Even the towering bald man stopped smiling and turned his attention to the new arrival. A majestic white tiger appeared, moving gracefully over the stone tiles, its body exuding a suffocating demonic aura. The oppressive energy was enough to make the bald man's smile disappear entirely. "This aura, is this a grand demon?" he muttered. The white tiger's fur was adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer in the light, drawing everyone's gaze. As the tiger approached, Xiu Xian felt an immense pressure weighing down on him. What an oppressive presence, he thought, barely maintaining his composure. Beside him, Wu Changgun was visibly trembling, his knees weak. The tiger's blood-red eyes glared at the crowd, its killing intent palpable. Sitting atop the beast was a striking woman. The white tiger was a three-stage grand demon, and its rider was none other than Zhao Yuhui, heir to the royal beast master bloodline. A prodigious cultivator at the second stage, dressed in a vibrant red outfit. Her confident and commanding aura captivated everyone around. Her eyes were covered by a red blindfold, adding an air of mystery. And her athletic figure exuded both power and elegance. As the white tiger and its rider approached, the gatekeepers turned pale. "Run! It's a grand demon!" one of them shouted. The guards bolted, fleeing as fast as they could. Their faces were green with terror, and their panicked cries echoed through the area. The white tiger glanced back at the bald giant with a sly wink, as if taunting him. The giant, despite his massive frame, visibly trembled as if he were a vibrating machine. Sweat dripped from his shiny head, and his legs wobbled until he collapsed onto the ground, looking like he had just survived a nightmare. Xiu Xian observed the scene and thought that the little demons he had fought before are nothing compared to this beast. This mount alone could decimate everyone here if it went berserk. His gaze lingered on the tiger as it walked away, leaving only its massive, round backside in view. If this grand demon were to lose control, it could easily kill or severely injure not just the newcomers but even the regular guards. Curious, Xiu Xian turned to Wu Changgun and asked, "How can Zhao Yuhui control such a terrifying creature?" As if he'd touched on Chenggen's favorite subject, the young man enthusiastically explained that that's thanks to the exclusive bloodline of the Zhao family. The southern overlords of the beast master lineage, they possess the royal beast bloodline. Passed down through generations, it allows them to control most rare and mythical beasts in the world. Wu Changgun continues saying that their family can even tame ancient beasts like the fire phoenix. Xiu Xian nodded as Wu Changgun rambled on about the true family's legacy. It's said that the current head of the Zhao family can control a phoenix, capable of traversing 10 demon lairs with ease. Just as he was hitting his stride, Wu Changgun suddenly turned into a fanboy. His eyes sparkled with hearts as he gushed that all of that pales in comparison to the genius Zhao Yunhui. For centuries, the true family's bloodline had been waning. But she perfectly inherited their royal beast bloodline. He practically drooled as he continued. She's a once-in-a-millennium talent, recognized nationwide as the next 10-realm grandmaster. Xiu Xian smirked at Wu Chenggen's devotion and thought that this guy would probably bend over backwards just to please her. Wu Chenggen's voice grew dreamy, saying that if someone like him could marry into the true family, he'd die smiling. Xian chuckled awkwardly. The two eventually made their way to the arena. Xiu Xian glanced at the massive crowd below and marveled at their number. The arena was built in a circular shape, with 3 golden statues of deities standing in the center. Surrounding them were 6 smaller statues of other gods. The people below looked tiny and like ants. Xiu Xian's curiosity was piqued as he examined the statues. There are so many statues of gods here, all in different sizes. What's their purpose? He wondered. Wu Changgun eagerly jumped in to explain, saying that they say each statue contains a form of divine power capable of suppressing demons within these demon lairs. Xiu Xian stroked his chin, his skeptical side kicking in. Thinking that these demon lairs are like a worldview where humans, demons and immortals coexist. Wu Changgun tilted his head, slightly confused by the remark. Yeah, something like that, he replied, scratching his head. Wu Changgun made a face of utter confusion. Xiu Xian then asks which demon lair should he enter, to which Wu Changgun explained that normally, you'd need to meet with the overseer to evaluate your cultivation level. Once that's done, you'll be assigned to a corresponding demon lair based on your stage. He pointed toward the first stage demon lair. A dark, mysterious hole emanating faint killing intent. First stage cultivators like them are sent to the first stage lair, he explained. Then he gestured toward the second stage lair. A smaller but far more intimidating entrance radiating dense killing intent. Second stage cultivators go to the second stage lair. The energy there is much stronger. Xiu Xian's eyes followed the direction of Wu Chenggen's hand and landed on a striking figure dressed in red. He pointed and asked if Zhao Yuhui must be heading into the second stage lair then. Gotan Khan hesitated, then stammered, saying that she's going into the third stage lair. Xian blinked in disbelief. The third stage lair. Before them stood Zhao Yuhui, her flawless figure clad in a vibrant red dress that accentuated her commanding aura. She exuded confidence and strength, looking ready to take on anything. The massive third stage lair before her was suffused with an oppressive energy. Tendrils of purple lightning sparking through the air. Killing intent radiated outward, chilling everyone who stood near it. Xiu Xian's system suddenly lit up with notifications. Xiu Xian has advanced to first stage minor success. Disciple Qifeng promoted to junior chef and disciple Lu Yunshu promoted to scholar. Nearby, a gatekeeper began murmuring that even for a genius, going into a lair alone is too dangerous. Another gatekeeper, this one with a scarred face, snapped back saying that he doesn't understand a thing. Does he know what it means to be the sole inheritor of the Zhao family's royal beast bloodline? It's something they see only once in 100 years. Scarface stared intently at Zhao Yuhui's bold, crimson silhouette and continued saying that with her unique bloodline, she can transcend her cultivation level and even defeat demons a full stage above her own. That's what makes her extraordinary. He concluded confidently. That she's the only one here who can do that, a true prodigy. Xiu Xian, watching the scene, couldn't help but exclaim that she's really impressive. Wu Chenggen, the self-proclaimed fanboy, snapped out of his reverie and muttered jealously that it's not simply impressive, he can't even compare to her. He and Xiu Xian, both first-stage cultivators, can only hope to survive in the first-stage lair. As the two were busy gossiping, a voice called out from behind, saying that he's going to the third-stage lair as well. Xiu Xian, startled, turned around to see who had spoken. Wu Chenggen, like a mother hen protecting her chick, immediately jumped to Xiu Xian's defense, asking them to wait and saying that there must be some mistake. He said hastily that this young master is also at the first stage, just like himself. If they send Xiu Xian into the third stage demon lair, he'll be nothing but food for the demons. There's no way he'll make it out alive. He was clearly afraid that if he spoke too slowly, Xiu Xian would be thrown into the lair without a second thought. But the scar-faced gatekeeper, puffed up with self-importance as a representative of the demon suppression department, sneered and asked if they were defying orders. With a sharp motion, the gatekeeper began to draw his sword, saying that those who disobey the demon suppression department's assignments will be punished on the spot, sensing the tension rising. Xiu Xian calmly raised his hand and waved dismissively, his voice cold and firm like frozen lake, saying that'll go in, so they shouldn't make things difficult for Wu Chenggen. The crowd, ever eager for drama, buzzed with excitement at this turn of events. They start murmuring that a first-stage cultivator is being sent to the third lair, which makes it a death sentence. Someone else speculated that he must have offended the gatekeeper. This sort of thing has never happened before. Another chimed in that he bets he's ticked off the entire demon suppression department somehow. Even Zhao Yuhui, the bold and confident heiress of the true family, raised an eyebrow as she watched Xiu Xian approach the entrance to the third stage lair. She thought to herself, how reckless. What stage is this guy even at? How dare someone at his level enter the same lair as her, the eldest daughter of the Zhao family? She scoffed, confident that this fool is just walking to his death. Still, she confidently stepped into the lair, prepared for whatever awaited her. Inside the lair, a group of demon rats, standing on two legs and wearing surprisingly formal attire, were sniffing around. One of them, a leader of sorts, held a small saber and was walking in circles, sniffing the air with suspicion. He clearly smelled human filth just now, he muttered, but the aura was weak. He turned to his fellow rats and barked orders to double the patrols, spread the word to the others, and find that intruder. Meanwhile, Xiu Xian sat quietly in a corner, hidden from view, thanks to the camouflage scroll crafted by Lu Yunshu. He was completely undetectable to the rat demons, no matter how keen their noses were. He watched with mild amusement as the rat demons scurried around, their noses twitching, desperately trying to sniff him out. Smart as they might be, if he just changes locations occasionally, they won't be able to find him, Xiu Xian thought, smirking to himself. Adding to his confidence, he had an abundance of supplies. Courtesy of Yi Qifeng, she had prepared a veritable buffet of attribute-enhancing dishes, packed neatly in his system's inventory. As Xiu Xian reached into the inventory and grabbed some food, he marveled at the amount of food his disciple managed to pack in. He'll never finish it all. He examined the dishes, noting their descriptions. These dishes can enhance his attributes by an entire level. He'll just eat them all and boost his stats even more. Smiling, he began to eat, thinking, why not make the most of this downtime? After all, time flies when you're well fed. 4 days had passed, and Xiu Xian's body radiated a vibrant, ocean blue energy. Delicate, glowing orbs drifted gracefully around him, each softly displaying intricate stats. Defense increased by 50%, attack enhanced by 50%, spiritual Kai boosted by 50%. As the orbs hovered with ethereal beauty, Xiu Xian carefully evaluated them, contemplating how attribute maximization might appear at this stage. He mused quietly to himself about the fascinating display. The system suddenly illuminated with gentle notifications. Xiu Xian had advanced to the second stage. His disciple, Yi Qifeng, had been promoted to head chef. She would now require higher-grade ingredients to continue advancing her culinary experience. Another disciple, Lu Yunshu, had been elevated to master calligrapher and would need higher-quality paper to refine her artistic skills. Xiu Xian released a soft, reflective sigh. He recognized that his leisurely days were drawing to a close and that he would need to tackle some challenges personally. Reaching into the system, he carefully retrieved a scroll and began contemplating his potential next steps. He admitted to himself that direct combat against the monsters was beyond his current capabilities. The smaller demons outside predominantly inhabited the first stage, with some having progressed to the second stage. Instead, Xiu Xian continued his fishing expedition within the demon lair, thoughtfully casting his line while pondering his strategy. He was determined not to allow his fishing experience to stagnate. Finding a way to elevate his skills before departing became his primary objective. Nearby, a rat demon's heightened senses caused it to sniff the air sharply, its intense gaze suddenly snapping toward the left. With a menacing hiss, the rat demon raised its saber and slashed downward. Sparks dramatically flew as its blade collided with another weapon, a spear held by a fellow rat demon. The first rat demon growled with growing frustration. He demanded to know the meaning behind this unexpected intervention. He questioned Lao Tam about why he would protect a human. Behind her red blindfold, Zhao Yuhui's eyes gleamed with remarkable cunning. She was clearly manipulating the rat demon, Lao Tam, through her legendary beast master bloodline. Under her subtle influence, Lao Tam stood guard protectively. His previously ferocious demeanor had transformed into something docile, resembling a devoted servant. The first rat demon trembled with overwhelming rage, staring in complete disbelief. He wondered about the extraordinary power to control demons inherent in the legendary beast master bloodline. Before he could fully comprehend the situation, a blade suddenly pierced through his abdomen. Overwhelmed by the day's numerous shocking events, the injured rat demon staggered, turning to identify his attacker. He looked at Lao Tu in stunned betrayal. Lao Tu withdrew his dagger, allowing his companion to fall lifelessly to the ground. Another rat demon's life had been extinguished. Before Zhao Yuhui stood Lao Tam and Lao Tu, two towering rat demons with muscular builds and glowing red eyes. In the lair's dim illumination, Zhao Yuhui surveyed the scene with a subtle, knowing smirk. She remarked casually about the group's size, unfazed by the surrounding chaos. Pulling down her red blindfold, her gaze illuminated like vibrant neon lights in a nightclub. Her Sharingan mode activated with precision. Her voice rang out, commanding and sharp. She instructed them to dance, invoking her beast control technique. The death waltz commenced. Under her mesmerizing spell, Lao Tam and Lao Tu redirected their murderous intent toward their own comrades. With wild, bloodthirsty eyes, they began systematically slaughtering the surrounding rat demons. Slash after slash, thud after thud, the rat demons fell to their own kin, their bodies scattering across the ground like discarded broken toys. As the carnage settled, Zhao Yuhui stood triumphantly amidst the fallen demons, her red dress pristine, her expression radiating haughty confidence. She commented that second-stage demons were remarkably easy to manage, a smirk playing across her lips. She noted that she had not even exerted significant effort. Suddenly, a voice echoed from behind her, challenging her confident declaration. The speaker suggested allowing the blind rat brothers to accompany her. Two eyeless rats materialized, their bodies minimally covered. These rats revealed themselves as the pack's notorious leaders, the infamous blind rat brothers who had reached the second-level small mastery stage. One lunged forward with newly sharpened claws, slashing toward Zhao Yuhui while boasting about their exceptional brotherly footwork. She responded coldly, acknowledging their arrival with a simple statement that their timing was perfect. In a swift movement, she gently raised her scarf, unveiling her eyes that glimmered with an activated Sharingan-like intensity. The blind rat simultaneously lifted its meter-long claws and launched an attack. He declared that her bloodline was useless against them. He sneered, emphasizing that they were blind. The blind rat's claws created an intricate web of slashes, causing blood to flow from Zhao Yuhui's body. Her face bore the marks of battle, evoking sympathy even from distant observers. As the blind rat revealed in what he believed was his triumph, the scene became grotesque. Resting on his claws was a bloodied head, seemingly belonging to Zhao Gai Wei. Taking a deliberate breath, the rat mockingly remarked to himself about the supposedly rare toxic bloodline that only 1 in 10,000 possessed. He called it a joke, though something felt amiss in the silent atmosphere. He turned to his brother and inquired about his thoughts. Suddenly, Zhao Gai Hui's voice echoed with a cold, calculated laugh. She questioned whether he truly believed she was dead. Both the onlookers and the blind rat found themselves stunned into silence. The rat gradually realized something was terribly wrong. Examining the head on his claws, he discovered with horror that it was actually his beloved brother's head. He screamed in anguish, repeatedly asking how such a thing could have happened and why he had killed his own brother. Zhao Yuhui calmly posed her own question. Why would he assume that someone blind could not be controlled by her? She then demonstrated the full might of the Zhao family's ancient bloodline, compelling him to face the consequences of his arrogance. She challenged his assumption, asking since when the millennia-old beast-taming bloodline of the Zhao family had become so easily defeated. Overwhelmed by rage, the blind rat charged toward her, screaming that he would kill her. He slashed wildly, believing he had gained the upper hand. He boasted about his speed, claiming he would shred her to pieces. Yet again, Zhao Gai Hui's confident voice pierced through his delusions, asserting that his efforts were futile. The rat suddenly realized the marks on her body were not from his attacks. Instead, the cuts were on his own body. Before he could comprehend the situation, his body explosively disintegrated into pieces. Zhao Yuhui walked through the eerie silence, projecting an air of pride. Her crimson figure slowly approached a lake within the cave, surrounded by untamed lotus leaves and wild grass, likely neglected due to the presence of demonic beasts. In the distance, a shadowy demonic figure sat upon a throne, waiting. As she stepped into the water, she encountered a wolf demon resting with his chin propped on his hand. The wolf gazed at her, resembling a husky waiting for its owner's return. This wolf was revealed to be the cave's final boss, a high-level third-stage demon known as the Sovereign Wolf King. He wore a simple black and white outfit, with a skull hanging stylishly at his waist. 2 eagle-like wings adorned his shoulders. The wolf's demeanor was tactical and legendary. He coldly inquired whether she was responsible for killing his subordinates at the second stage. Without hesitation, he acknowledged the rumors of her being a once-in-a-century genius. Bluntly, he stated his purpose, which contrasted sharply with what Zhao had previously heard from the demon-suppressing bureau. He revealed that he had been ordered to kill a man, but now found a woman before him. Zhao Yuhui's anger flared at the implications of the demon-suppressing bureau's potential collusion with demons. She passionately questioned how they could have fallen so low as to ally with such entities. The wolf dismissed her concerns with an arrogant snort. To him, a kill was simply a kill, and the identity of the target was irrelevant. He began to infuse spiritual energy into his weapon, enveloping his spear in a swirling combination of water and energy. Standing atop the water, he spun his spear in a fluid, mesmerizing motion, creating a glowing circle. His stance radiated confidence and power, compelling admiration for his remarkable showmanship. He smirked with arrogance, challenging her to demonstrate the capabilities of a supposed once-in-a-century genius. Zhao Yuhui calmly removed her blindfold, revealing a pair of stunning eyes that radiated sheer determination, different from the previous Sharingan-like appearance. She responded with confident assurance, explaining that she excelled at defeating demons far more powerful than herself. Her bold declaration carried an implicit promise to tame the wolf and reduce him to nothing more than a submissive house pet. She boldly proclaimed that he would eventually kneel before her and address her as, "Your Majesty." In a swift motion, the sovereign Wolf King propelled himself upward, sending water droplets cascading through the air. He scoffed skeptically, exuding an air of supreme confidence. Unexpectedly, an ancient tortoise demon emerged from the water's depths. The wolf effortlessly dispatched the tortoise demon, impaling it with his spear. The unfortunate creature barely existed for a moment before being eliminated. Zhao Yuhui swiftly leapt backward, avoiding the attack. Her complexion turned pale as the gravity of her situation became apparent. Had her automatic protective talisman not activated at the precise moment, she would have perished. Her thoughts swirled in complete disarray, even more chaotic than encountering a romantic interest. Adding to her mounting concern, her beast-taming spiritual energy seemed inexplicably ineffective. With a determined gesture, she removed the red ribbon concealing her eyes. She summoned her great fox demon with an authoritative command. The magnificent tiger demon surged forward with lightning-like speed, its blood-red eyes gleaming with murderous intent. It struck the ground where the sovereign Wolf King had previously stood, forcing him to leap into the air. He remarked with grudging respect, noting that a second-level demon would have been instantly defeated. He expressed surprise at her summoning a high-level demon more powerful than herself, though he remained unimpressed. Ignoring the tiger demon entirely, the sovereign Wolf King sprinted directly toward Zhao Yuhui. He rationalized that eliminating her would conclude the confrontation more efficiently. Zhao Yuhui's pupils illuminated, radiating a commanding aura reminiscent of a parent disciplining a child. She clearly intended to employ her beast-taming art to subdue the arrogant wolf. Her commanding presence demanded he stop, while the sovereign Wolf King's eyes gleamed like jade in moonlight. She gasped in disbelief, wondering why her technique failed to take effect. The great tiger demon, sensing imminent danger, transformed into a towering, muscular humanoid form and leapt to shield her. Their clash sent water spraying dramatically, obscuring the battlefield. The muscular tiger and the rogue wolf continued their intense combat. The sovereign Wolf King taunted his opponent, acknowledging the demon's surprising agility despite its human transformation. He grudgingly praised the demon's reputation, declaring it the strongest leader-level demon he had encountered. The battle intensified. Each of the sovereign Wolf King's attacks crackled with spiritual energy, shattering cave stones and causing debris to rain down. He eventually leapt into the air, bringing his spear crashing downward. The tiger demon could only defend, raising its claws to block the assault. Landing with graceful precision, the sovereign Wolf King's eyes gleamed with cold determination. He sneered, declaring that his previous attacks were merely a warm-up. Now, he intended to get serious. He unleashed his serpent spear technique, his weapon lashing out like a venomous snake with swift, unpredictable movements. The tiger demon found itself trapped within the intricate web of spear strikes, responding with desperate claw slashes. Ultimately, the tiger demon's strength wavered. The sovereign wolf king's cruel smirk accompanied his tightening spear strikes, completely binding the demon. With a simple hand gesture and a chanted spell, he commanded its destruction. The tiger demon exploded into fragments. Zhao Yuhui, recognizing the bottle's hopeless trajectory, realized her only option was retreat. Invoking the 36th stratagem, she fled, her face burning with humiliation. As she ran, she wrestled with her wounded pride. A genius from a prestigious family, a once-in-a-century prodigy, reduced to fleeing. Yet she understood that remaining would mean certain death. She admitted to herself that this opponent was insurmountable, her beast-taming bloodline rendered useless. She mourned the swift sacrifice of the tiger demon, recognizing that even her strongest summoned creature was no match for the sovereign wolf king. The sovereign wolf king blocked her path, raising his spear mockingly. He taunted her, referencing her earlier bold proclamation about making him kneel. With a thunderous roar, he swung his weapon toward her, declaring her judgment and impending death. In that desperate moment, a steel-scaled fish suddenly appeared, shielding Zhao Yuhui from the fatal blow. The creature shattered into countless fragments, scattering across the battlefield. Zhao Yuhui stood frozen in shock, barely comprehending her narrow escape. The sovereign wolf king looked confused, recognizing the steel-scaled fish as a creature he had stationed at the western cave entrance. A white-clad figure emerged, carrying a sack over his shoulder. The wolf narrowed his eyes, wondering if another expert had arrived. It was none other than Xiu Xian, known as the casual fisherman, who walked gracefully across the water with an air of effortless confidence, embodying the classic hero rescuing a damsel in distress. Outside the arena of battle, at the entrance to the demon's lair, a thick black energy surged with an ominous whisper, as if quietly signaling the impending arrival of a powerful presence. The crowd gathered near the cave entrance hummed with a soft, anticipatory energy. Whispers rippled through the gathering, suggesting that someone was about to emerge. A hint of purple lingered in the atmosphere. A dream-like illumination spilled from the cave's depths, delicate sparks of electricity dancing softly in the air. A gentle clack echoed. A pair of boots stepped into view with measured grace. Zhao Yuhui emerged, her form radiant in a fiery red dress that seemed to flow like liquid flame. Her head was held high, pride emanating from her every movement. The crowd's admiration rose like a gentle tide. They murmured among themselves, acknowledging her remarkable spirit. A genius, they whispered, was truly a marvel. The fact that she had navigated a demon's lair populated by creatures far beyond her stage seemed almost trivial to them. Murmurs of agreement drifted through the crowd. Soft affirmations punctuated the air. Amid the collective admiration, a hushed speculation began to take shape. Someone wondered aloud about the fate of that first-stage cultivator who had accompanied her. Their companions' gazes locked in unison, their thoughts converging like headlights cutting through darkness. They quickly drew their conclusions. How could such a talentless individual from the Yi family have survived? The stage difference was insurmountable. Even a modest chicken could overwhelm such a weak cultivator, they reasoned. The scar-faced gatekeeper observed Zhao Yuhui's solitary emergence, a knowing smirk playing across his features. He leaned towards his superior, his voice a low, confidential murmur. He praised the brilliance of their strategic approach, describing it as a masterful use of a borrowed blade. His companion's grin widened, his front teeth catching the light. He spoke of the numerous methods at their disposal for eliminating those who might dare to offend the demon-suppressing bureau, his confidence radiating like a tangible force. But before he could complete his boastful narrative, an unexpected scene unfolded. Zhao Yuhui gracefully descended to her knees, bowing at a precise, perfect angle. Her voice rang out, clear and profoundly respectful. She proclaimed her welcome to Master Tu Nian, her words heavy with reverence and triumph. The scar-faced man's expression froze, transforming into a canvas of pure bewilderment. His mind struggled to comprehend the scene before him. The proud Zhao Yuhui, who had never shown respect to anyone, was now kneeling. And more astonishingly, She was addressing Tu Nian, whom they had dismissed as a failure, as her master. He attempted to mask his confusion with a forced, tremulous laugh, a desperate attempt to restore the narrative he had constructed. But his companions were not convinced. One of them, trembling like a child learning to articulate complex thoughts, struggled to speak. Their gaze was drawn to the cave's entrance, where an immense, overwhelming purple demonic aura swirled, so potent it seemed capable of sweeping away everything in its path. Curiosity held the onlookers in place. Whispers speculated about the source of such a terrifying presence. Could a great demon be attempting to break through its mystical constraints? Yet, despite their fears, no one moved to flee. The scene hung suspended, pregnant with unresolved mystery and anticipation. Suddenly, a magnificent wolf's head emerged from the cave's depths, its glowing blue eyes radiating an intensity that seemed capable of consuming everything within its gaze. The crowd stood motionless, their hearts thundering with a mixture of terror and awe. Some individuals were so overwhelmed by fear that they experienced involuntary physical reactions, while others appeared frozen, as if suspended between life and a sudden, shocking demise. The scar-faced gatekeeper's recognition was instantaneous and visceral. His teeth clenched, fingers tightening around his sword's hilt with a protective instinct. His voice trembled as he identified the approaching entity, announcing to his companions that the sovereign Wolf King, the great leader of the third-stage demon lair, had arrived. Panic surged through him. He urgently instructed his subordinates to summon reinforcements with immediate effect. However, the dramatic moment dissolved into unexpected humor. The wolf's head let out a soft snort, and someone playfully adjusted it, revealing two neon elements underneath. A cheerful voice declared that they had simply forgotten to remove their helmet, accompanied by a radiant, disarming smile. Two neon stepped forward, emanating an aura of effortless, almost casual charm. Zhao Yuhui gracefully descended to the ground, her palms pressed down in a gesture of profound respect. Her voice was calm and composed as she spoke. She noted the complexity of her kneeling posture, humorously suggesting that it was not something to be casually imitated, and then directly addressed her apparent master with a simple question about when her training would commence. The crowd erupted into a symphony of confusion and disbelief. One of the gatekeepers muttered sardonic commentary, suggesting that the scenario unfolding before them was so improbable that even pigs attempting to climb trees would seem more believable. Whispers and speculations rippled through the gathering. How could the Zhao family's proud daughter be addressing this seemingly unremarkable individual as her master? Some wondered if Tu Neon might possess some hidden connection to a powerful faction. The fundamental mystery that perplexed everyone was how a first-stage cultivator could emerge unscathed from a third-stage demon lair, a feat that defied all conventional understanding. Scarface's expression contorted, resembling someone who had unwillingly consumed something deeply unpleasant. His internal monologue was a turbulent mix of disbelief and bitter conjecture. He was convinced that Tu Neon must have employed some form of dark, incomprehensible sorcery to not only survive but also secure Zhao Yuhui's protection and escort. His grip on the sword gradually relaxed, but his internal turmoil continued to simmer. The fact that she had addressed this seemingly unremarkable individual as master only intensified his sense of bewilderment and suppressed envy. The scene remained suspended in a delicate balance between reality and surreal imagination, challenging every preconceived notion of power and hierarchy. An hour earlier, the sound of clashing weapons and thunderous blows echoed through the cave. Tu Neon and the sovereign Wolf King squared off in an intense battle. Zhao Yuhui observed from the sidelines, her intuition telling her something was off. Is he really just a first-stage cultivator? She wondered. Her eyes widening as she carefully watched the fight. Tu Neon nimbly dodged, his sharp eyes fixed on the wolf demon's spear as it smashed into the ground. On the other side, the sovereign Wolf King was startled. Not only had Tu Neon dodged his attack, but he also managed to counter it. Interesting. Very interesting. The wolf sneered as the two clashed again, their energies colliding violently, sending debris flying everywhere. The sovereign Wolf King squinted in appreciation. He says to Xiu Xian that he's not bad for actually managing to withstand 2 of his moves. He began to question the reliability of the Demon Suppressing Bureau's information. They told him he was only at the first stage of cultivation. But even if someone killed him, he wouldn't believe that nonsense, with arrogance. He twirled his spear, preparing his ultimate move. He tells Xiu Xian that he'll make sure he dies faster with his ultimate technique. With a deafening roar, his spear transformed into a writhing mass of snake-like projections, each with sharp, venomous heads poised to strike 2 neon from all directions. 2 neon, calm and composed, readied himself. From the sidelines, Zhao Yuhui watched with growing anxiety. That technique. It was the same one the wolf had used to kill her great tiger demon. Even a 3rd-stage cultivator would struggle to escape unscathed from this, she thought, her heart pounded. Just as the wolf's attack was about to land, something unexpected happened. Xiu Xian raised a turtle shell, using it to block the assault. The wolf's spear struck the shell, but its snake-like projections failed to penetrate. The sovereign wolf king was dumbfounded. A turtle shell? He's using a turtle shell to block his ultimate move. Impossible. From above, Xiu Xian descended with a surge of power, his blade gleaming as he prepared to strike. The wolf quickly raised his spear to parry, and their clash sent water and stones flying in all directions. Although the sovereign wolf king managed to block the strike, he still maintained his overconfidence, saying arrogantly that he's not bad for blocking his ultimate move. For someone as inexperienced as him, to fight him on equal footing, he truly is extraordinary. Xiu Xian, however, glared coldly at the boastful wolf and asked what does he mean by equal footing? Who said he's on equal footing with him? He had come here to prove his dominance, not to play the wolf's game of equals. He's been waiting 7 days for this moment. Does he think he came here just to be evenly matched with him? Xiu Xian channeled his spiritual energy into his blade, causing it to glow with an ominous brilliance. The wolf, sensing danger, braced himself as Xiu Xian struck again. Their collision caused the ground to crack, rocks exploding upward like fireworks. The sovereign wolf king managed to block the attack, but he was visibly shaken. Gone was his earlier arrogance. Instead, disbelief clouded his face. This is impossible. He wonders how can a mere 1st-stage cultivator suppress him like this. Above Xiu Xian's head, swirling spiritual energies shimmered like ghostly sparks. His technique seemed enhanced beyond reason, plus 50% attack power, plus 50% defense, plus 50% spiritual energy. Xiu Xian's aura became darker, almost otherworldly, as if he had emerged from the depths of hell itself. He seemed ready to send the sovereign wolf king's name straight into the underworld's ledger. Understanding the wolf's stunned thoughts, Xiu Xian smirked and explained coldly that his current state is perfection. The sovereign wolf king's spear suddenly turned flexible like a snake as he attempted to strike Xiu Xian with a surprise attack from behind. Wham! Xiu Xian brought his blade down, cleanly slicing the unfortunate spear in 2. Without missing a beat, Xiu Xian unleashed a powerful palm strike. The wolf king was sent flying, crashing into a boulder with a deafening boom. He knelt, trembling, unable to stand anymore. Between labored breaths, he stuttered. Where on earth did you come from? How could a mere novice defeat him? Xiu Xian didn't respond with words. Instead, he charged forward, picking up the broken spear of the wolf king. He delivered a finishing blow, smacking the wolf's face sideways. Xiu Xian coolly explained that he's just a regular guy fishing. The poor wolf's decapitated head rolled to Zhao Yuhui's feet, who had been eagerly watching from the sidelines. She stared in confusion, finally understanding why she couldn't control him. The wolf's head was just a prop. Xiu Xian turned his broken spear towards the defeated foe. His tone cold and unyielding, asking, "What is he doing here in the demon lair pretending to be a demon?" The bald man beneath the wolf's guise, his face covered in blood, trembling, finally admitted that he was originally a member of the Demon Suppressing Bureau. He became obsessed with cultivation and stole a forbidden technique from the library. He continued his tale of woe. His voice shook as he recounted his life. After he was exposed, he had no choice but to flee. He hid in this demon lair, disguising himself as a demon to survive. Hearing about a forbidden technique, Xiu Xian's demeanor shifted with a glint in his eyes. He demanded that technique be handed over. The bald man's body began to dissolve into dust, his life force fading rapidly. In his final moments, he managed to say, "Since he's dying, he'll have to take it himself. He's spent 5 years on this technique and still hasn't grasped its basics. Maybe he can figure it out and open the first path in 5 years." With a faint rustle, his body disintegrated completely. As the faint wisp of black energy dispersed into the air, a sudden notification echoed in Xiu Xian's mind. The system had activated, announcing a series of updates. It displayed the first acquisition, the Sovereign Wolf King's fishing rod. The description labeled it as an ordinary fishing rod, but one that could also be wielded as a weapon. Most notably, it had the unique ability to attract forbidden techniques. The system followed with another acquisition, the Heavenly Transformation Manual, described as a complex and highly advanced cultivation method. The manual detailed that upon mastery, the user could transform into multiple forms, their complexity increasing with the user's cultivation level, making it almost impossible for enemies to discern their true nature. The system accompanied this with images of the fishing rod and the manual, before continuing with further updates. New spells were unlocked. The first, Disciple Summoning, allowed the user to summon disciples from the void with a cooldown of 1 hour. The second, Vision Breakthrough, granted the ability to detect certain attacks and spells of enemies whose cultivation levels were not higher than the user's own. As Xiu Xian reviewed the notifications, he pondered over the significance of the acquisitions. He remarked to himself that the Heavenly Transformation Manual was merely an advanced 4th stage technique, and questioned its utility. At that moment, Zhao Yuhui interjected with her observations. She stated that Xiu Xian's ability to defeat a 3rd stage demon Cain demonstrated extraordinary luck. Sharing her knowledge, she explained that the Heavenly Transformation Manual could only be practiced by those that are above the 5th stage. She emphasized that it was otherwise impossible to master and warned of the dire risks of attempting it prematurely. She noted that forcing the technique could lead to crippling consequences or cause one's cultivation to spiral out of control. Xiu Xian, unfazed, took an unorthodox approach. To Zhao Yuhui's utter shock, he casually shoved the manual into his mouth and swallowed it whole. She exclaimed internally, astounded by what she had just witnessed, wondering if he had truly eaten the manual. After completing his unusual meal, Xiu Xian turned to Zhao Yuhui and observed her with a scrutinizing gaze, letting his eyes drift conspicuously from her head to her toes, lingering inappropriately. Zhao Yuhui's mind raced with indignation as she silently accused him of harboring vile, perverse thoughts. Before she could react, Xiu Xian formed a hand seal, murmuring the word, "transform." In an instant, he morphed into an exact replica of Zhao Yuhui herself. Every detail, from her figure to her complexion, was replicated flawlessly. With a playful grin, he remarked that she must be surprised by his mastery of the technique. Zhao Yuhui, overwhelmed by disbelief, struggled to comprehend how he had mastered such a difficult ability so quickly. Xiu Xian, still in his transformed state, examined himself with curiosity. He noted aloud that his height seemed to surpass hers and even commented on the differences in certain physical attributes, which left Zhao Yuhui red-faced with rage. Her fury boiled over as she lashed out, swinging her fist at him. Xiu Xian dodged easily, but her anger was unabated as she furiously declared that the face he had replicated looked nothing like hers. Amused, Xiu Xian lightly touched his cheek and noted that his spiritual energy might have caused a minor glitch. He reverted to his original form with a shimmer and dismissed the matter, shifting the conversation to something he deemed more pressing. He asked Zhao Yuhui if she could control beasts. Proudly, Zhao Yuhui declared that her Zhao family had possessed a beast-taming bloodline for hundreds of years. Sensing an opportunity, Xiu Xian immediately attempted to recruit her, suggesting that she become his disciple. He assured her that he treated talented and obedient disciples with care. Zhao Yuhui, however, rejected the idea without hesitation, raising her hand as if to emphasize her point. She declared with pride that her family, revered across the southern lands, would never allow someone like her to lower herself to the status of a disciple. Turning on her heel, she announced that they should leave the demon lair quickly, as lingering too long could tarnish the reputation of the Zhao family. Unwilling to let her walk away, Xiu Xian played his final card. He provocatively asked if she desired to summon a phoenix. Zhao Yuhui froze mid-step, her composure faltering. She turned back sharply, demanding to know if he understood the gravity of what he was suggesting. She explained that summoning a phoenix was no trivial matter and required meeting 3 nearly insurmountable conditions. Perfectly inheriting the Zhao family bloodline, reaching the 10th stage of cultivation, and defeating a phoenix in the celestial realm. Xiu Xian, however, dismissed her explanations with a wave of his hand, claiming confidently that she could achieve it by acknowledging him as her master. He boasted that under his guidance, he could transform her from a wild chicken into a phoenix. The absurdity of his words struck Zhao Yuhui like a physical blow, leaving her momentarily speechless. Yet, deep down, his suggestion began to chip away at her resolve. She recalled the immense pressure her family patriarch had placed on her to emulate their revered ancestor, who had controlled a phoenix by the age of 20. With only 2 years left to reach the 10th stage, the odds seemed insurmountable. As Xiu Xian pressed his case, pointing out her limited time and his own extraordinary accomplishments, Zhao Yuhui felt herself wavering. His mastery of the heavenly transformation manual, a feat few could achieve even at the 10th stage, stood as undeniable proof of his capabilities. Reluctantly, she began to consider the possibility that perhaps, just perhaps, following him might be her best chance to succeed. After leaving the 3rd stage demon lair, Zhao Yuhui performed a respectful kneeling farewell, a gesture that left the onlookers utterly astonished. Shortly after, Zhao Yuhui mounted a massive gray wolf, preparing to depart. She stated resolutely that she would first return home to report her progress and then begin her cultivation under Xiu Xian's guidance. He responded casually, urging her to hurry, remarking that the phoenix was already calling her forward. As Zhao Yuhui disappeared into the distance, the system chimed again with a notification. It announced that Xiu Xian had advanced to the 3rd stage and formally recorded Zhao Yuhui as his new disciple. She was noted as being at the 2nd stage, possessing a rare beast-taming bloodline. Her specialization was listed as disciple training with the unique ability to transform small animals into monsters. The notification elaborated that as her cultivation level grew, so too would the strength of the monsters she could create. Meanwhile, within the Yi mansion of the Yi household, Madame Lu, the second wife, sat deep in thought. Above her, a small insect buzzed noisily. News had reached the mansion that Xiu Xian had returned safely, a fact that greatly unsettled her son, Yi Ba. He paced back and forth, his face contorted with frustration. Muttering angrily, he expressed his disbelief, questioning how Xiu Xian could have possibly survived an encounter with a 3rd stage demon. He speculated bitterly that Zhao Yuhui, the Zhao family heiress, must have protected him. His voice rose in frustration as he recalled how the Zhao family had rejected their marriage proposal last year, choosing to ignore his supposed worth. Madame Lu, observing her son's growing panic, scolded him sharply. She dismissed his concerns, claiming that even if Xiu Xian had advanced to the 3rd stage, it was insignificant, equivalent to a mere low-level guard in their household. Her tone turned calculating as she advised her son on how to handle the situation. She explained that the key was to push Xiu Xian into losing control, creating a commotion that would draw the attention of the authorities and the demon-suppressing bureau. At that point, they could easily place the blame on him. Yi Ba, impatient with her reasoning, argued that they couldn't afford to remain idle. Madame Lu, ever cunning, revealed a sinister plan. She suggested consulting the poison master in their employ. Her plan involved slipping poison into Xiu Xian's food during dinner, ensuring his death and then destroying the evidence. She admitted her reluctance to resort to such measures but stated that Xiu Xian's resilience had left her no choice. Hearing this, Yi Ba's expression twisted with malice, his grin reflecting his dark thoughts. He voiced an additional demand: to have Xiu Xian's beloved chef captured and killed in front of him, forcing him to witness the act before his own death. As they schemed, the small insect that had been buzzing earlier landed unnoticed on Madame Lu's neck. She absent-mindedly scratched at the spot, but before she could react further, the insect delivered a swift prick. Madame Lu's body collapsed instantly, transforming into a desiccated corpse. Her once vibrant form was reduced to hollow eye sockets, wrinkled skin, and brittle bones. Yi Ba, witnessing the horrifying sight, stumbled backward in terror, calling out for his mother. Her lifeless body, now resembling a dried puppet, crumbled to the floor. The insect, its eyes glowing red with an eerie light, lunged at Yi Ba, its screech echoing through the room. Pale and drenched in sweat, Yi Ba screamed for help. By the next morning, a crowd had gathered beneath a large tree to read the latest imperial court proclamation. The notice featured a detailed illustration of a massive mosquito and warned of its deadly nature. A young man in the crowd recounted the story, explaining how Madame Lu and her son, Yi Ba, were attacked by a demon mosquito within their home. The tale quickly spread, with additional rumors claiming that even the household guards were not spared, leaving 3 dead by night's end. The city buzzed with gossip. Some marveled at the escape of Yi Ba's cousin, who had reportedly avoided the attack by virtue of being away at the Demon Suppressing Bureau at the time. Others speculated about Xiu Xian's connection to the incident, though no solid proof tied him to it. Amidst the cacophony of speculation and envy, the crowd debated the peculiar circumstances surrounding the Yi family's misfortune. Watching silently from a distance, Lu Yunshu, calm and composed, observed the commotion. She carefully analyzed the situation and later returned home to draft a detailed report for her master. As her pen glided across the paper, recording the latest events, her meticulous focus drew admiration from her peers. Some envied her diligence, while others respected her poise. Her report included every critical detail, ensuring her master remained well informed. As Lu Yunshu completed her task, the system notified her of new skills she had unlocked. The asterisk flying letter transmission spell asterisk allowed her to write and send messages remotely via enchanted scrolls, enabling seamless communication with her master. Another skill, the asterisk analytical scheme spell asterisk, granted her the ability to describe a target on a scroll and receive insights about their details and movements. Thus, the city continued to buzz with tales of the Yi family tragedy, the enigmatic demon mosquito, and the mysterious advancements of Xiu Xian and his newly recruited disciple. The pieces of a much larger game began to fall into place, as both allies and enemies moved unseen. Meanwhile, Xiu Xian rested on a high tree branch, lounging comfortably as he casually wrote a reply on his enchanted scroll. He noted playfully that there was no need to worry about recent developments and asked whether the spirit bamboo he had brought back from the demon lair was sufficient for their needs. The notebook before him shimmered, and words appeared on its surface in response. It explained that the spirit bamboo was currently sufficient and that there was still plenty in the storehouse. However, the message added that the recent methods they had been using seemed ineffective, even at the refinement pavilion, where they had been unable to improve the disciples' skills. As Xiu Xian read his disciple's message, he glanced at the system's annotations, which revealed new subtasks. One was titled *Art of Corporeal Authorization*, a technique allowing Lu Yunshu to replicate the movements of human or demonic bodies onto scrolls for detailed study. Another, *Great Flame Cooking Technique, Braised Meat Edition*, offered Yi Qi Thuong the chance to learn fire element cooking techniques. The annotations clarified that the disciples would need to gain practical experience through these tasks before advancing to their next titles. Xiu Xian frowned slightly as he considered the implications, his sharp brows furrowing in thought. He reflected that neither of his disciples had yet faced real combat, and he remarked internally that sending them on missions alone would be too risky at their current level. He resolved to find safe opportunities to train them while continuing to work on his own main mission. As if in response to his thoughts, the system issued a new main mission. It detailed a situation in Da Nhi village, where strange occurrences had begun to unfold. The villagers were reportedly standing motionless for extended periods before collapsing from exhaustion and dying. The mission tasked Xiu Xian with investigating the cause and eliminating the culprit. With his decision made, Xiu Xian leapt from the tree, activating his Vajra jump. In a flash, his body transformed into a sleek, 17-centimeter pigeon. With powerful beats of his wings, he soared through the air at astonishing speed, his streamlined form cutting through the skies effortlessly. Before long, Xiu Xian arrived at Da Nhi village, his mind focused on the new mystery awaiting him. The village appeared utterly desolate, its once bustling streets now eerily silent. At the entrance, 2 guards stood vigil. One of them raised a hand to stop the approaching figure, asking sharply what his purpose was in coming to the village. Xiu Xian, calm and composed, presented his official badge from the Demon Suppressing Bureau and stated plainly that he was there to investigate the strange occurrences. At the sight of the badge, the guard's demeanor shifted entirely. He apologized respectfully, addressing Xiu Xian as "Sir," and offered to guide him into the village with all due deference. As they walked, Xiu Xian observed the unsettling scene before him. Villagers stood frozen along the path, their bodies rigid like stone statues. Crackling streaks of faint lightning surrounded their immobilized forms, adding an ominous glow to the eerie tableau. The guard explained that this strange phenomenon had begun 7 days prior, with villagers suddenly freezing in place, unable to move or speak. Xiu Xian listened intently, nodding as he surveyed the scene. He silently recited a dispelling incantation, but the villagers remained petrified, their wide, bloodshot eyes conveying pain and despair. He quickly realized that the spellbinding them must have been cast by someone of a higher cultivation level than his own. Determined, he attempted to move one of the villagers by pulling gently at their arm, but even this effort proved futile. Confused, he murmured to himself, questioning why they could not be moved. The gatekeeper, witnessing this, grew alarmed and urged him to stop immediately. The guard explained nervously that touching the afflicted villagers could spread the condition, rendering the toucher frozen as well. To illustrate, the guard pointed toward a motionless mother clutching a market basket, her young child frozen beside her. He explained somberly that the child had tried to touch his mother, only to be petrified in the same way. He further elaborated that even indirect contact, such as striking them with a stick or throwing objects, would fail to move them. The only way the spell was broken, he said grimly, was when the afflicted collapsed and died. The guard then led Xiu Xian to a clearing at the edge of the village, where rows of covered bodies lay in silent testimony to the tragedy. He explained, his voice heavy with sorrow, that sorcerers from surrounding regions had been called upon, but none had been able to break the spell. With half the village already dead, he feared the remaining villagers would soon meet the same fate. After completing his report, the guard bowed deeply and excused himself, stating that he would not disturb Xiu Xian further unless needed. Xiu Xian acknowledged him with a nod, allowing him to leave. Alone now, Xiu Xian formed a hand seal and recited an incantation to summon his disciple, Lu Yunshu. With a sudden puff of smoke, Lu Yunshu appeared beside him, her expression startled and flustered. She exclaimed in a mixture of confusion and embarrassment, remarking nervously that a warning would have been appreciated before being summoned. She muttered, half-jokingly, that she could have been bathing or otherwise unprepared. Xiu Xian scratched his head awkwardly and admitted that he would remember to give her advance notice next time. After the brief moment of awkwardness passed, the two turned their focus to the task at hand, their expressions growing serious as they prepared to unravel the mystery plaguing the village. Xiu Xian observed the petrified villagers and remarked thoughtfully that they appeared to be under some kind of spell. He then turned to Lu Yunshu and asked if she could analyze the situation. Lu Yunshu, standing straight and resolute, replied with determination that she would do her best. With practiced movements, she took out her brush and began drawing in the air. Golden spiritual energy flowed abundantly from her strokes, illuminating the area with a soft, radiant glow. As she worked, a glowing golden circle formed in the air before her, its surface covered with intricate, dancing characters. Her focus remained intense as she quickly jotted notes into her enchanted book. After a few moments, the result appeared, and she stated that it was a binding spell. She explained to her master that this particular spell was advanced and seemed to rely heavily on the caster's cultivation level. She added that the spell's potency diminished with distance from the caster. Pointing toward a faint trail of spiritual energy leading to a distant mountain, Lu Yunshu concluded that the caster was likely at the summit, probably within a temple at the top. Xiu Xian, without hesitation, decided that they needed to confront the caster immediately. However, Lu Yunshu hesitated, suggesting that rushing in might not be wise since their cultivation levels could be suppressed by the caster's power. She mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that Xiu Xian often preferred to level up quietly before facing powerful foes. But Xiu Xian's resolve was firm. He replied that while he might have the luxury of time, the villagers did not. Their lives were hanging by a thread, and he couldn't afford to delay. Without further discussion, Xiu Xian transformed into his pigeon form, shrinking into a sleek, 17-centimeter bird with glossy feathers. Guided by the directions in Lu Yunshu's book, he soared swiftly toward the mountain temple. From above, he noticed a monk sweeping the temple courtyard. The monk, however, was no ordinary figure. He exuded the aura of a third-stage master of the great accomplishment realm. His movements, though simple, were swift and energetic as he swept the courtyard with vigorous strokes. Suddenly, as though sensing Xiu Xian's presence, the monk narrowed his eyes and flicked his hand. In an instant, Xiu Xian, still in his pigeon form, felt a surge of energy strike him like lightning. Frozen midair, he plummeted to the ground with a dull thud. Returning to his human form, Xiu Xian found himself sitting before the monk. The monk, with two small horns protruding from his bald head, greeted him politely with palms pressed together. His saffron robe and prayer beads gave him an air of serenity, but Xiu Xian was not fooled. The monk calmly asked what brought Xiu Xian to his humble temple. Xiu Xian wasted no time, accusing the monk of harming the villagers at the base of the mountain and demanding that he lift the binding spell immediately. The monk, however, maintained a faint smile and claimed innocence. He stated serenely that, as a monk, he practiced peace and kindness and could not possibly harm anyone. Xiu Xian was unconvinced by the monk's feigned innocence. Rising to his feet, he prepared for battle, wielding his staff imbued with various buffs to enhance his attack, spiritual energy, and defense by 50% each. Swinging his weapon with purpose, he accused the monk directly, pointing out that he had seen the monk use the binding spell moments earlier. He demanded to know, if it wasn't the monk, who else could be responsible. The tension between them thickened, and Xiu Xian's resolve was unwavering. The confrontation had begun. The monk pressed his palms together, bowing slightly as he readied himself for the impending clash. Xiu Xian lunged forward, his staff aimed directly at the monk's bald head. The monk stood firm, his body unmoving and solid like iron, absorbing the impact without faltering. Xiu Xian noted to himself in surprise that the monk's stance was extraordinary, a technique that made him appear unyielding. The monk countered swiftly, launching a powerful knee strike that disarmed Xiu Xian, sending his staff flying into the distance. Without pausing, the monk followed up with a well-aimed punch, his prayer beads jangling rhythmically with each movement. Xiu Xian managed to block the strike with a firm parry, but the monk transitioned seamlessly into an uppercut. Quick on his feet, Xiu Xian dodged the attack and repositioned himself. The monk shifted his tactics, moving from fists to a flurry of precise kicks. Xiu Xian skillfully deflected each strike, his movements fluid and controlled. The courtyard echoed with the sharp sounds of their combat. Bang! 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 The fierce exchange continued as the two combatants traded blows at lightning speed. Despite the intensity, neither had gained a decisive advantage. The monk, finding the duel entertaining, smiled brightly. He commented with a hint of amusement that Xiu Xian's martial arts were commendable and suggested that a decade of hard work must have significantly improved his cultivation. Xiu Xian, silently dismissing the monk's misjudgment, decided not to respond. Instead, he shifted his focus and aimed an attack at the monk's front teeth, hoping to catch him off guard. The monk, squinting slightly, seemed to find the attempt both futile and amusing. With an air of smug confidence, the monk remarked that while Xiu Xian's skills were respectable, he could not possibly defeat someone of his caliber. As if to emphasize his point, the monk formed a swift hand seal, channeling his spiritual energy. In an instant, Xiu Xian found himself frozen midair, his body locked in an awkward, frog-like pose. The spell had immobilized him completely, leaving him unable to move as the monk observed him with a calm and composed demeanor. The monk traced a circle on the ground, his palm surging with overwhelming force before unleashing a devastating strike. The ground shattered with an explosive boom asterisk, debris scattering in every direction as the temple's once pristine courtyard was reduced to a massive crater. Amid the rubble, Xiu Xian lay motionless, his body seemingly lifeless. At that moment, a glowing message from Lu Yunshu appeared in Xiu Xian's enchanted notebook. She expressed her concern, asking whether her master was all right. Ever composed despite the dire situation, Xiu Xian picked up his notebook and reassured her with a reply, stating that he was fine and that this time, he would surely emerge victorious. Quickly shifting focus, he assigned new tasks to Lu Yunshu. He instructed her to mimic the monk's techniques to determine how long the freezing effect lasted and to find a way to extend the time required for the monk to replicate his own martial arts. Observing the battle from a tree nearby, Lu Yunshu responded swiftly, confirming that she would begin mimicking the techniques immediately. She also suggested luring the monk to an open space where she could assist strategically. Meanwhile, Xiu Xian consumed a green bean cake, a rare recovery item crafted by Ecchi Fuang using materials sourced from the Demon Suppressing Bureau's dungeon. With only 3 cakes in his possession, he knew he had to use them wisely. The cake restored his strength fully, and with a crunch Xiu Xian stood just as the monk approached him once again. The monk clasped his hands together, offering what seemed to be a mocking farewell. He said that Xiu Xian no longer needed to endure the suffering of the mortal world. With a forceful stomp, the monk declared with glee that this time, he would send Xiu Xian on his way permanently. However, the monk's foot struck only a boulder. His expression shifted as he realized he had been tricked, exclaiming that it was the transformation technique. Turning quickly, the monk launched a strike at Xiu Xian, but Xiu Xian intercepted the blow midair, catching the monk's wrist in an iron grip. Xiu Xian muttered that monks certainly talked a lot of nonsense before slamming the monk into the ground with remarkable force. The monk, unshaken, retaliated with his signature move, a devastating iron head strike. The impact was catastrophic, shaking the temple violently as dust and debris cascaded down like an earthquake had struck. From the rooftop, a faint blue silhouette appeared as the monk began recovering. Xiu Xian leapt into the air, spinning a full 360 degrees before landing a powerful kick aimed directly at the monk's head. But the monk, accustomed to using his head as both a weapon and shield, countered with another iron head strike. The sheer force of their clash caused the ground beneath them to collapse, leaving a massive depression in the terrain. The monk crouched defensively in the center of the crater, while Xiu Xian ascended once more, preparing to strike from above. The monk clasped his hands together, laughing with confidence. He reiterated smugly that no matter how skilled Xiu Xian's martial arts were, he would never prevail against him. Growing impatient, the monk summoned a sinister, glowing energy ball that pulsed with malevolent power. He admitted that Xiu Xian was far stronger than anticipated and declared that he could no longer afford to hold back. As he prepared to unleash the attack, he remarked coldly that Xiu Xian's end was near. Xiu Xian, however, responded with nothing but a radiant, confident smile. The grin seemed to infuriate the monk, who roared in anger, demanding how Xiu Xian dared to smile when death was imminent. The monk hurled the energy ball with all the force of his void death technique. The purple energy tore through the air, crackling with destructive power and obliterating everything in its path. When the dust finally settled, a massive crater stretched from the temple gates, carving deep into the mountain itself. The monk raised his hands skyward and chanted softly, offering a farewell to what he believed was Xiu Xian's passing, wishing him peace in the afterlife. But then, a faint purple aura stirred the leaves around them. The monk turned, horrified to see Xiu Xian alive and wielding an identical purple energy ball, perfectly mimicking the asterisk void death technique. The monk shouted in disbelief, enraged that Xiu Xian dared to use his own technique against him. Lunging forward with a powerful punch, the monk aimed to strike, but Xiu Xian dodged with ease. Holding the massive energy ball in his hands, Xiu Xian smirked before launching it straight at the monk. The resulting explosion echoed through the mountains, shaking the very earth. The monk's body was sent flying after being consumed by the overwhelming power of the attack. As the battle between Xiu Xian and the evil monk raged on, the monk staggered backward, his body battered and bloodied. He muttered in disbelief that Xiu Xian had managed to replicate his techniques after only a few exchanges. He couldn't comprehend how someone could so effortlessly grasp the skills he had spent a lifetime perfecting. His voice, strained and filled with frustration, trembled as he questioned the unfairness of the situation. Xiu Xian, however, remained focused. He recalled the moments before their fight when he had quickly drawn and activated a skill interface. He silently acknowledged that his ability to acquire techniques mid-battle had given him an overwhelming advantage. His internal thoughts resonated with confidence as he preemptively activated the copperhead iron body, countering the monk's immobilization technique before it could take effect. The monk, overwhelmed by Xiu Xian's relentless assault, collapsed onto the ground, coughing up blood. His mind was clouded with regret and confusion. He wondered what he had done wrong in life to deserve such a humiliating defeat. His thoughts drifted to the past, where he justified his actions by claiming he had granted mercy to the suffering villagers at the foot of the mountain. He convinced himself that ending their misery was an act of kindness, not cruelty. However, his reflection was cut short as an overwhelming surge of dark energy erupted from within him. His rage manifested into a monstrous form, his eyes glowing with a deep, ominous purple. With a furious roar, he bellowed that he had done nothing wrong, that his actions were justified, that the world was ungrateful for his mercy. His voice shook the battlefield as the dark aura around him intensified. Xiu Xian's eyes widened as he realized that, despite the monk's injuries, he was still capable of fighting. He exclaimed internally that his opponent should not have been able to move after such a decisive defeat. But before he could react, the monk raised his hands, forming intricate symbols in the air. With a final, desperate act, he invoked a forbidden formation, the air crackling with immense energy as the symbols lit up in a blinding purple glow. As the battle escalated, the evil monk unleashed his most terrifying technique yet, Purple Void Judgment. A massive, glowing formation enveloped the battlefield, crackling with an ominous purple energy. Xiu Xian observed the intricate design surrounding him and realized the monk was still holding back a finishing move. He noted that after the sudden flash of purple light, the monk had seemingly vanished. Xiu Xian reasoned that outside the formation, Lu Yunshu likely wouldn't be able to analyze it quickly enough to assist him. He determined that he would have to fight his way through and figure out the structure of the formation as he moved. His eyes narrowed as he braced himself, knowing that the only way out was to face the monk head-on. Suddenly, bolts of golden lightning shot down from the darkened sky, smashing into the ground with devastating force. Xiu Xian activated Copperhead Iron Body, his muscles tensing as the defensive technique enveloped him in a protective sheen. He darted through the battlefield, evading the deadly strikes as the purple energy intensified. The formation's power surged, and shadowy eyes emerged within the void, watching his every move. Xiu Xian quickly analyzed the attack, realizing with alarm that it was an immobilization technique fused with lightning strikes. A deadly combination meant to lock his movements while striking him down. He admitted to himself that this was no ordinary formation. It was designed to overwhelm opponents both physically and mentally. The monk, now a towering figure wreathed in purple and gold energy, descended from the sky with explosive force. His fists shattered the rooftop as he pursued Xiu Xian relentlessly. Despite the pressure, Xiu Xian stayed focused. He understood that he could only use Copperhead Iron Body during the brief moments when he broke free from the monk's immobilization field. Each time the monk's attacks threatened to pin him down, Xiu Xian pushed his body to its limits, using his advanced movement techniques to escape by a hair's breadth. He clenched his fist and reassured himself that if he could find the core of the formation, he might be able to turn the tide of battle in his favor. As the intense battle raged on, the evil monk, now fully transformed into a demon, unleashed his ultimate technique, the Purple Void Judgment. A massive burst of destructive purple energy surrounded him, sending shockwaves that shattered the environment. Xiu Xian, still fighting to hold his ground, gritted his teeth and exclaimed that he hadn't even been given a moment to catch his breath. The immense pressure of the demon's attack was suffocating, and the very air around him crackled with purple lightning. Despite the overwhelming odds, Xiu Xian pressed on, but the demon wasn't letting up. The monk's final move, the Purple Void Judgment, surged violently towards him, and Xiu Xian knew that it was only a matter of time before this barrage would overwhelm him. Elsewhere, Lu Yunshu, deep in concentration, called out to her master in concern. She was still in the midst of completing her task, but her worry was clear as she hurried to finish what she had started, assuring him that she was almost done. Meanwhile, the demon mocked Xiu Xian's struggle, taunting him that he wouldn't be laughing for much longer. He declared that his previous mistake was allowing Xiu Xian to escape, but this time, he had fully immobilized him with no way out. Xiu Xian's expression remains calm as he simply activates his formation attack, Purple Void Judgment. The evil monk stares in disbelief at Xiu Xian, his voice filled with frustration as he exclaims that Xiu Xian has managed to use a larger formation to envelop his own. He admits that while Xiu Xian's cultivation level is lower, his spiritual reserves somehow surpass his own. His expression twists with malice as he declares that he will kill Xiu Xian and extract his spiritual root for research. With a furious roar, the monk unleashes a devastating attack, dark flames surging forth, crackling with destructive energy. The ground trembles under the sheer force of his power as the fireballs explode into a massive inferno. However, Xiu Xian remains unfazed. He tilts his head slightly, his lips curling into a faint smirk as he calmly questions whether this is truly the monk's final move. As the monstrous flames descend upon him, Xiu Xian raises his hand. Golden energy erupts from his body, countering the attack with overwhelming force. The monk's eyes widen in shock as his flames are instantly nullified, replaced by radiant sonic wave that distorted the space around them and sealed his movements. He struggles, but his body is frozen in place, his expression shifting to panic. The monk's thoughts race as he realizes that something is terribly wrong. He wonders why his own formation did not work and how he ended up immobilized instead. Suspicion creeps into his mind as he questions if Xiu Xian had used his own formation against him. The immobilization effect is terrifying. He finds himself unable to see, sense, or act, trapped in his own spiraling thoughts. Meanwhile, Xiu Xian moves with precision, energy crackling around him as he prepares to finish the battle. The monk, unable to perceive anything, assumes that Xiu Xian will use a powerful thunder or fire technique to strike him down. Though he knows a direct hit would be devastating, he reassures himself that he should still have enough strength to escape. However, before he can act, a blinding surge of energy erupts from Xiu Xian's hands. Blue lightning pierces the air, striking the monk with incredible force. The surrounding area shatters, the sheer impact tearing through the landscape as the monk's body is left completely obliterated by the overwhelming impact. In the aftermath, the battlefield is left in ruins. Xiu Xian stands tall amidst the destruction, calm and composed. The dark energy that once filled the area dissipates, leaving only silence. With the battle concluded, he turns his attention away, knowing there are more pressing matters to attend to. Xiu Xian had barely taken a breath after eliminating the evil monk when he reunited with his first disciple, Yi Qifeng. She looked concerned as she waited by the bridge, wondering aloud why her master had not returned yet. As soon as she spotted him, relief flooded her expression, but she did not waste time with pleasantries. She asked about Sister Yunshu's whereabouts. Xiu Xian explained that he had sent Yunshu back to the calligraphy shop. But before he could finish, he notices her anxious expression, so he asks about it. She hurriedly revealed that the Yi family patriarch, his father, was back, a fact that clearly unsettled her. Hearing this, Xiu Xian wasted no time and headed straight for the Yi family's main hall. As he approached, he immediately sensed something was off. The air was thick with an oppressive aura, and he recognized it for what it was: killing intent. Someone inside was radiating overwhelming hostility. Stepping into the hall, Xiu Xian's eyes locked onto the figure of an elder, exuding immense power. The elder stood still, observing him. Xiu Xian realized that this was a test. His father, the family patriarch, was measuring his strength. Not one to back down, Xiu Xian met the challenge head-on. He unleashed his power, and the two clashed, their auras colliding violently. The elder studied him closely, murmuring that the rumors were true. Xiu Xian had awakened his spiritual root upon coming of age. Watching his son in action, the patriarch's expression shifted. He no longer saw just a boy but a cultivator of remarkable potential. He muttered to himself that Xiu Xian's talent was exceptional. Then, as quickly as it began, the tension disappeared. The elder's face broke into a grin, and his entire demeanor changed. With an exaggerated laugh, he suddenly called out to Xiu Xian, referring to him as his son. With open arms, he beamed with pride, exclaiming that it had been years since they last met, that Xiu Xian had grown so much, and that he was proud of him. Xiu Xian, however, was not easily fooled. He noted how his father's attitude had shifted so suddenly, from hostility to warmth. He did not lower his guard, questioning inwardly why the patriarch's killing intent had vanished so abruptly. The patriarch continued, offering grand promises. He told Xiu Xian that he had worked hard all these years and that, as a reward, he could have anything he wanted: gold, treasures, a bigger house, or even a woman. His voice carried an unnatural enthusiasm, as if he were trying to compensate for years of neglect in a single moment. Xiu Xian, unimpressed, recalled that this was the same man who had ignored him for nearly 2 decades, acting as though he did not exist. And yet now, after the death of his wife and legitimate son, he suddenly acted like a loving father. The shift was too convenient. Xiu Xian could see right through it. Still, he decided to take advantage of the situation. Smirking, he played along, responding with interest. Since the patriarch was being so generous, he declared that he had one particular request. Shortly after, Xiu Xian stood in front of a massive estate. He announced to Yi Qifeng and the others that this would be their new home. His disciple, confused, asked where he had gotten the money to buy such a grand place. Without hesitation, Xiu Xian explained that he had sold the valuable materials they had collected from the demon cave. But then, with a casual shrug, he added that he had also borrowed a little from the family patriarch. The scene shifted to the patriarch, his face contorted with rage. He shouted in disbelief, cursing that Xiu Xian had drained his treasury. He had promised to fulfill reasonable requests, but he had never expected Xiu Xian to take full advantage of the situation. Meanwhile, Xiu Xian simply smiled, pleased with how things had turned out. The next morning, as the sun rose over the newly acquired estate, Xiu Xian slept soundly in his room. The peaceful silence was suddenly broken by a loud noise as Yi Qifeng barged in, exclaiming in alarm that someone was at the main gate. Jolted awake, the young master nearly fell out of bed, cursing that such a sudden awakening might give him a heart attack. As he made his way outside, he was greeted by the sight of a striking woman standing at the entrance with confidence. Recognizing her immediately, he declared in surprise that it was her. A notification in his mind identified her as skilled greeter Zhao Yuha. The woman, Zhao Yuha, smiled and greeted him casually, calling him master, with a teasing tone. After briefly acknowledging her presence, he pointed towards a room, instructing that it would be hers from now on. Zhao Yuha, appearing both amused and intrigued, glanced around the estate before striding inside confidently. Later that day, curiosity led Yi Qifeng to inquire about the contents of a mysterious box in the possession of Zhao Yuha. Peering inside with interest, she remarked that the contents seemed valuable. The disciple, grinning mischievously, explained that the item inside was a divine beast, a treasure passed down in their family. Suddenly, a small creature burst out of the box with a brilliant glow. Qifeng exclaimed in shock, recognizing the creature as a phoenix. Chaos erupted as the tiny phoenix flapped its wings aggressively. Yi Qifeng cried out in surprise while Zhao Yuha, instead of being alarmed, burst into laughter. She teased that despite all the hype, the phoenix was nothing more than a tiny chick. Qifeng, still recovering from the scare, rubbed his forehead in frustration while Zhao Yuha continued to chuckle. As the commotion settled, Zhao Yuha suddenly turned her attention toward the estate. Her sharp gaze falls on Lu Yunshu, who is staring at them from her window. Then she turns to Xiu Xian and compliments him for having another beauty at hand. Later, as the day progressed, the young master stood outside, gazing at a hawk soaring across the sky. Zhao Yuha, standing nearby, suddenly raised her hand and gave a sharp command, causing the hawk to swiftly descend and land on her arm. The young master observed her skillful handling of the bird and noted that she had impressive training techniques. After a brief exchange, Zhao Yuha handed him a letter. He examined the contents and found out that it's a new mission from the Demon Suppression Division. Zhao Yuha questioned whether she was truly not going to be involved in an upcoming task. He confirmed that she would not be required, advising her to direct any inquiries to his senior sisters instead, causing Yi Qifeng to chuckle playfully. The young master soon found himself at the edge of a large crater-like pit. Observing its depth and structure, he concluded that this was a significant location. Holding up a glowing blue pearl, he muttered that he had merely borrowed it. Without hesitation, he leapt into the water, submerging himself into the unknown depths. As Xiu Xian dove deeper into the abyss, the waters around him grew darker and colder. Holding onto the divine pearl, he let it guide him toward the unknown depths of the estate's hidden mysteries. As he swam, his eyes caught sight of an ancient submerged structure, its once grand entrance now covered in layers of sediment and algae. A pair of monstrous fish-like demons lurking in the shadows. One of them, a grotesque creature with green scales and sharp teeth, sneered at the meat on a fishing hook. It remarked that humans are so foolish for thinking they would fall for this primitive trap. Another fish demon, slightly smaller but just as menacing, warned its companion to be cautious. Despite the warning, the first demon, driven by greed, lunged forward in an attempt to devour the meat. In an instant, a strong force pulled the creature upward, and it realized in horror that it had fallen for a baited trap. The second demon cursed loudly, berating its companion for being so easily hooked despite its earlier warning. The other demon, as he followed, saw Xiu Xian throw a similar bait toward him. Observing the scene with a smirk, amused, he remarked that such tricks were predictable and that he would never fall for such foolish tactics. But as if on instincts, it instantly took the bait and became dumbfounded with himself. Meanwhile, at the surface, an hour prior, a small group of individuals had gathered near the crater's edge. A man with a sinister smile scoffed as he mentioned that Xiu Xian had foolishly thrown himself into the depths without understanding the danger that lay beneath. A silver-haired elder beside him nodded, acknowledging that the demon den had remained sealed for a reason. The sinister man, rubbing his hands together greedily, mused that regardless of the risk, he would not allow this opportunity to slip away. He declared that no matter what, he had to obtain Xiu Xian's spiritual roots. His expression darkened as he contemplated his next move. Back underwater, Xiu Xian maneuvered through the ruins cautiously, his senses sharp. As he reached a narrow passage, he used the technique he learned from the evil monk to sense his surroundings, but he couldn't sense any presences nearby. As he continued forward, the wall beside suddenly glowed brightly before exploding violently, taking him by surprise. Xiu Xian drops into the underwater cavern, surrounded by jagged rocks and glowing bubbles rising to the surface. He immediately notices a swarm of monstrous crustaceans lurking in the depths. Observing them, he realizes that brute force alone won't be enough to eliminate them all. He thinks to himself that a trap must be the best solution. As he formulates a plan, he pulls out a large, enchanted piece of bait and tosses it into the water. The moment the bait lands, the creatures react instinctively, surging forward. One of the enemy leaders, a massive, armored shrimp-lobster hybrid, suddenly realizes what is happening. He shouts in alarm, warning his forces that it is a trick. He commands them to return to their positions, but it's too late. Xiu Xian swiftly activates his spell, and a massive surge of energy erupts from his hands. The horde of monsters struggles in vain, their movements slowing as the spell spreads across their bodies. As they freeze in place, Xiu Xian conjures a dark sphere of crackling energy and hurls it into the immobilized enemies. The impact causes a chain reaction, obliterating the trapped creatures. As the battle ends, a system notification appears in his mind, informing him that he has gained significant experience points. He advances from the 4th realm early stage to the 4th realm minor star, acknowledging that his strength has increased. He takes a moment to absorb this information before shifting his focus to another potential threat. Suddenly, the ground beneath him quakes. The ice and debris scatter as an even larger, more menacing enemy emerges. The water cannon armored shrimp lobster, a creature of the fourth realm minor stage. Xiu Xian observes its powerful limbs and the glowing core embedded in its chest. He mutters to himself that this creature's technique is intriguing, reminding him of gunfire effects from his previous world. He wonders if he could learn such an ability. Without hesitation, he raises his hand and casts a binding spell. Chains of energy shoot forward, aiming to restrict the creature's movements. However, the enemy reacts with astonishing speed, dodging out of range before the spell can fully take effect. Xiu Xian's eyes widen as he exclaims internally that it is moving too fast. He realizes that it has already positioned itself beyond the range of his binding spell. Recognizing the urgency, the demon immediately switches tactics. He charges up an attack and fires his multi-water burst cannon technique. Powerful streams of water energy surge forward, aiming to overwhelm his opponent. At the same time, Xiu Xian channels his dark energy and unleashes a volley of explosive purple sigils, which rapidly spread through the battlefield. The moment they make contact, massive shockwaves erupt, sending devastation rippling through the cavern. Xiu Xian moves with incredible speed, his body cutting through the air as he pursues his enemy. He realizes that even his powerful purple void thunderlaw cannot reach his opponent. Frustration grips him as he acknowledges the vast gap in speed. He declares that he must close the distance, knowing that if he remains at this range, he has no hope of landing a decisive strike. The enemy, a monstrous figure with sharp, insect-like limbs, moves effortlessly, weaving through the barrage of attacks. Xiu Xian watches as his foe maintains its lead, avoiding his techniques with ease. He exclaims that he can't catch up at all, his eyes burning with determination. With a sudden motion, he extends his weapon, channeling his energy into a long, glowing staff. The weapon slices through the air, its sharpness amplified by his spiritual force. The enemy, sensing the incoming strike, reacts quickly. Its multiple limbs move with unnatural agility, evading the attack. As Xiu Xian presses forward, he watches his energy-infused staff strike the ground, causing a massive explosion of energy. The enemy, momentarily surprised, turns its attention toward the glowing weapon embedded in the earth. Its eyes widen as it realizes the trap. He declares that this is his chance, his opportunity to turn the tide of battle. The enemy, unfazed, scoffs at his attempt. Although hurt on his shoulder, he mockingly states that humans never learn, reminding Xiu Xian that no spell can reach it at its current speed. However, Xiu Xian does not falter. He grips his weapon tightly, preparing for his next move. The battlefield trembles as energy crackles in the air. Xiu Xian suddenly charges energy into his staff and suddenly laughing it toward the demon. The attack took him by surprise and sent him flying backwards. Xiu Xian gathers a massive surge of purple energy, its sinister aura crackling with raw power. The sheer force of the attack sends tremors through the battlefield. The explosion erupts with devastating force, engulfing the surroundings in a blinding flash of violet light. The shockwave shatters the ground beneath him, sending debris flying in all directions. Xiu Xian watches as the monster is torn apart in the blast, its body disintegrating into nothingness. However, as the dust settles, he senses something is wrong. His body is racked with pain, far beyond what he expected. He exclaims that this shouldn't be happening. He reasons that the monster did not unleash its spell in time to inflict such damage. Yet, his injuries are severe, his body struggling to remain upright. He questions why he is so gravely wounded if the attack had already been neutralized. Suddenly, a sinister voice echoes through the cavern. A figure emerges from the shadows, their presence exuding malevolence. The figure, his father, cloaked in dark robes, proclaims that they have been waiting for this moment. Xiu Xian's eyes widen as he recognizes the enemy before him. He exclaims in shock that it is them, the one he had long suspected but never expected to appear at this crucial moment. The cloaked figure smirks, exuding confidence. They declare that they have been lurking in the background, biding their time for the perfect opportunity. Now, with Xiu Xian weakened from battle, the final strike is theirs. Their voice drips with satisfaction as they claim that they will take the last hit, ensuring victory for themselves. Xiu Xian glares at the enemy, his body barely able to move. The enemy revels in their triumph, raising a hand crackling with arcane energy. They boast that they don't even need to exert much effort, the circumstances have already played out in their favor. They reveal that while Xiu Xian was preoccupied with the battle, they had carefully placed a curse that linked both their lives together. If one dies, so does the other. His father acknowledges his resilience, commenting on how tough his body is. However, realization dawns upon them as they examine him closely. Xiu Xian smirks after hearing this. His father's irritation creeps into their voice as they question why someone on the verge of death is still laughing. With malice radiating from them, the enemy declares that once they tear out Xiu Xian's spirit root, they will see if he can still maintain that defiant laughter. A powerful attack is launched, dark energy crackling as it rushes toward Xiu Xian. The enemy sneers as they announce that his spiritual root will soon belong to them. Just as victory seems certain for the enemy, their expression shifts to shock. Their body freezes in place, realization hitting them like a cold wave. They stammer, questioning what they are seeing. A stone statue now stands before them. Panic sets in as they exclaim that something is wrong. Their voice grows frantic as they acknowledge that the situation is turning against them. Xiu Xian remains composed, golden energy crackling around him as he watches the scene unfold. The enemy realizes, too late, that they have been tricked. Xiu Xian calmly states that this particular technique has never failed him, as it always works well on foolish opponents. His words carry an air of amusement as he watches their disbelief. The enemy, now in a state of desperation, demands to know how Xiu Xian managed to break their curse. They tremble with frustration, unwilling to accept the turn of events. Xiu Xian, still unfazed, acknowledges that it was a well-crafted technique but reveals that he had deciphered its weakness. The enemy struggles to comprehend, their anger boiling over. They claim that it was supposed to be inescapable, their voice shaking with disbelief. As their rage reaches its peak, they notice something even more alarming. Xiu Xian moves with purpose, and the enemy yells, demanding to know what he is doing. Their panic is palpable as they watch him manipulate the energy for a devastating attack. They scream that he must stay away, their voice filled with dread. But Xiu Xian remains resolute, standing firm as he prepares to turn the tables completely. The enemy, now overwhelmed by Xiu Xian's power, roars in frustration. Their voice trembles with anger as they accuse him of being ruthless, questioning his true identity. They demand to know how someone like him could exist, their disbelief evident in their trembling form. Xiu Xian remains calm as he stands amidst the swirling energy. His expression is unwavering as he declares that he is merely an ordinary soul who had the luck of reincarnating into this world. His words carry a weight that leaves the enemy speechless, their eyes widening as they process the shocking revelation. A surge of power erupts from Xiu Xian, and the enemy cries out in desperation. But before they can react further, their form is consumed by the overwhelming energy. As the battle comes to an end, the scene shifts. A new chapter of Xiu Xian's journey begins in a place far removed from the battlefield. Seafood ingredients is placed on a table, and Yi Qifeng expresses her delight, wondering if this was prepared just for her. He instructs her to split the food ingredients with Yuhui, and if there isn't enough, she could take more from the system inventory since there is still more in there. She pouts cutely, accusing his of playing favorites and asking why should she share the good stuff with her. He reassures her that he'll help her gather lots of ingredients later. He then turns to Zhao Yuha, asking her how the little phoenix chick is doing, to which she sighs and tells him to try feeding it some monster meat. As he takes a piece of meat and approaches the little chicks, the four of them gather around it as they watch curiously. Zhao Yuhui activates her special ability, rapid feeding, explaining that after consuming spirit-infused food, a spirit pet's growth rate increases by 100%. The small, unimpressive chick eagerly pecks at the food, unaware of the transformation that is about to take place. Xiu Xian observes closely as golden energy begins to envelop the tiny creature. He notes that its body is rapidly changing, growing larger and more radiant with each passing moment. Feathers shimmer with a golden light, expanding and reshaping as an intense aura surrounds the evolving spirit beast. The chick's transformation reaches its peak as its wings spread wide, now resembling a majestic phoenix. Xiu Xian acknowledges that its state has officially ascended to the first stage, Firestorm Phoenix. Zhao Yuhui excitedly declares that the phoenix has arrived, laughing triumphantly. She takes pride in the dramatic display, emphasizing that this is no ordinary beast but a true mythical creature. Yi Qifeng, however, remains unimpressed. He sarcastically remarks that, despite the dramatic transformation, the creature appears to be nothing more than a fancy-looking chicken. Her dismissive attitude clearly irritates Zhao Yuhui, who insists that if she says it is a phoenix, then it is a phoenix. She questions whether she has a problem with her spirit pet's growth. Yi Qifeng threatens to confiscate all her monster meat. Xiu Xian get experience points have increased notification and that his comprehension of the Great Tao has slightly improved. However, he also reflects that recently, the experience he gains directly from his disciples has decreased significantly. He contemplates the issue, realizing that simply assigning them daily tasks is no longer enough to help them grow. He recalls an important system notice, which informs him that as his disciples' cultivation increases, only higher difficulty profession tasks will reward experience points. This prompts him to take action. With a sudden realization, he activates a new ability, the summoning seal, as golden symbols shine brightly around the disciples. Xiu Xian informs them that they now have the ability to use summoning spells. He explains that this will be necessary when they start completing profession-related tasks on their own, as relying on him for everything will no longer be an option, and use this spell to summon him in case of emergency. Lu Yunshu asks if he won't accompany them on their tasks, to which he informs her that he's busy these days. Later, walking through a deep canyon, Xiu Xian speaks to another cultivator, Wu Chenggun. He expresses gratitude for their help during the underwater monster case last time, acknowledging that without their intelligence, he would not have been able to avoid Kai's sneak attack. The cultivator shrugs off the praise, revealing that they had been keeping an eye on Kai's scar-faced subordinate for a while now. They explain that when that person borrowed the yin orb from the warehouse, it became clear that something was suspicious. Xiu Xian, curious, asks why they decided to help him, noting that they had only met once before, during the Demon Suppression Division's entrance exam, and had barely interacted since then. Wu Chenggun laughs, feigning humility, claiming that their aptitude is poor and that they had only managed to pass the entrance exam by landing the lowest ranking position in the division with great effort. Wu Chenggun continues speaking, stating that in this chaotic world, he can only rely on the strongest backing to ensure his survival. He explains that from the moment he first met Xiu Xian, he knew that this man was destined for greatness. He declares that choosing to become Xiu Xian's ally was not just a decision but a necessary step towards securing a dependable ally. He then casually mentions that a certain scar-faced individual suddenly resigned from his position and left for home without warning. He expresses his confusion, admitting that he has no idea why the man made such an abrupt decision. Xiu Xian listens to this revelation and simply responds with mild interest. Meanwhile, deep in the mountains, a patrolling man finds himself in grave danger. He curses his fate, questioning who assigned him to patrol such a perilous area. He exclaims in frustration, wondering how such a powerful creature could be lurking in the mountain, waiting to ambush him. His heart pounds as he suddenly locks eyes with a terrifying presence. Two glowing red eyes pierce through the darkness, revealing the monstrous form of the great demon, the Black Bear Demon. Before he can react, the demon charges at him with immense speed. A powerful impact follows, sending shockwaves through the surroundings and obliterating the cultivator. Zhao Yuhui watches from a distance through the eyes of the bear demon, eyes glowing with an eerie red light. She calmly states that the task has been completed. She directs her words to her master. Xiu Xian receives confirmation that Ye Kai's most critical informant has now been eliminated. He acknowledges the report without much reaction, as if it were merely another step in a grander scheme. She hesitantly speaks, questioning why the upper echelon of the Demon Suppression Division has summoned Xiu Xian this time. Elsewhere, Wu Chenggun admits that their own rank is too low to understand such high-level affairs and expresses curiosity about the matter. He states that true understanding will only come when he meets the real decision-makers themselves up there. Xiu Xian stands at the foot of the massive paper staircase leading up to a floating island. He exclaims that this must be some kind of joke, expecting someone to climb such a flimsy path without any ladders or proper support. His companion responds that this is exactly why ordinary people like them cannot ascend. Testing the material, Xiu Xian sprints upwards and notices that the paper is surprisingly sturdy, making him wonder if it is infused with magical properties. As he continues upward, golden characters suddenly illuminate on the paper, causing a surge of energy to rush toward him. He realizes that an automatic magic seal activates to defend against intruders. The glowing script pulses with power, forming a barrier to block anything unworthy from ascending. Undeterred, Xiu Xian clenches his fists and calls forth his own strength. He channels his energy into his arms, activating his technique, Copper Head, Iron Arms. His body surges with power as he braces himself against the magic seal, determined to push through whatever obstacles lie ahead. A brilliant golden explosion erupts as his energy radiating in every direction. The attacks land with immense force, sending shockwaves through the air, yet his expression remains resolute. He observes the situation closely, noting that this divine energy should be enough to immobilize even the most formidable opponent. However, as he continues, a realization dawns upon him. His attacks are having no effect. His eyes narrow as he questions whether his copper-hardened body can hold on for at least 2 more attacks. He wonders if his immobilization spells, which have always worked against powerful techniques, are completely useless in this case. His disbelief grows as he pushes his energy further, yet his target remains unaffected. At that moment, a counterattack is launched. A piercing golden force tears through the air, striking with overwhelming power. The impact is immense, forcing him to react quickly. His body tenses as the golden is mere inches from his eye when suddenly a hold grabs the incoming sword. A warrior clad in red stands with a composed demeanor, his aura radiating quiet confidence. He comments on the recklessness of Xiu Xian, stating that relying solely on brute force without fully understanding the enemy is a dangerous mistake and he should have waited downstairs for them to come get him. He informs Xiu Xian that these sigils have been specifically designed to restrain powerful individuals up to the 8th realm, ensuring they cannot escape. He does some hand signs, deactivating the defense system. Xiu Xian watches in disbelief, stunned by what has just occurred. He exclaims in shock, realizing that the cultivator has just nullified all the restrictive formations in an instant. Without wasting another moment, he moves at an incomprehensible speed while dragging Xiu Xian along. Xiu Xian could barely keep his calm as he's being dragged at incredible speed. He struggles to maintain his composure. Xiu Xian watches what unfolds before him, commenting with amusement that 8-realm experts can be rather impressive. He acknowledges that if Lu Yunshu was here, she would have sketched all this out. As Xiu Xian is forcefully dragged upward by his companion, he takes a moment to assess the situation. He acknowledges that the cultivator pulling him forward is undeniably powerful, someone capable of tearing through the sky with ease. He notes that despite the rapid ascent, the pressure of the higher realms is beginning to distort space itself. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. A tear in space forms above them, crackling with a sinister energy. Xiu Xian's instincts flare, and he realizes that something unnatural is emerging. A monstrous demon, wreathed in malevolent red energy, bursts forth from the rift, its presence sending shockwaves across the floating island. He remarks that the aura radiating from the creature feels ancient, something designed to hunt and suppress beings like himself. The demon wastes no time, lunging at them with an overwhelming force. Xiu Xian braces for impact, but before he can react, his companion swiftly evades the attack, maneuvering effortlessly through the distorted space. He observes that his companion is unbothered, continuing upward without hesitation, as if already prepared for such interference. Meanwhile, the demon's assault carves through the sky, leaving behind a chaotic storm of destruction. Xiu Xian notes that the sheer power behind the attack is enough to shatter the earth below. As the demon roars in frustration, its piercing gaze locks onto him. He mutters to himself that this battle is far from over. With no other choice, he prepares to engage. As Xiu Xian stood alongside his companion, he heard the man beside him remark that there shouldn't be a demon cave portal nearby. Xiu Xian, calling him Big Bro, states that now isn't the time to be saying that when the demon is clearly preparing something big. As the air trembled with overwhelming power, Xiu Xian's instincts screamed at him that this entity was far beyond the ordinary. He gritted his teeth and thought to himself that even though facing such an opponent felt like a mere ant challenging a god, he had no choice but to act. Gathering his energy, Xiu Xian raised his hand and unleashed a powerful spell infused with radiant purple energy. He declared that if there was even a sliver of hope, he would take the shot. A surge of power exploded from his palm, aiming directly at the dark entity before him. Yet, before the energy could fully materialize, the white-haired cultivator simply crushes it barehanded, dumbfounding Xiu Xian. Xiu Xian stared in disbelief at the overwhelming force before him. He questioned aloud if this was truly the difference between realms, a gap so vast that it felt insurmountable. His words carried both frustration and awe, as he struggled to comprehend the sheer disparity in power. His companion, standing beside him, remarked that the enemy before them was far beyond what he could handle, so he shouldn't waste his energy. Xiu Xian's voice cut through, urging him to take action rather than simply observing. The air crackled as the enemy unleashed a devastating attack, crimson energy surging forward like an unrelenting storm. Seeing the upcoming attack, the white-haired cultivator formed an intricate purple seal in the air. The ancient script within the seal glowed, radiating an immense energy that clashed violently against the crimson force. The moment the attack connected, it failed to penetrate. The energy rebounded off the barrier as if it were nothing more than a harmless breeze. Xiu Xian, witnessing this, exclaimed in shock that the attack had bounced off. The crimson energy, now redirected, spiraled out of control, tearing through the forest with devastating force. A rabbit hidden in the forest watched in terror as the destructive energy expanded, consuming everything in its path. A final explosion rocked the landscape, a brilliant red light engulfing the forest. Xiu Xian stood in shock, gazing at the devastation before him. He exclaimed that this level of destruction was truly overwhelming. He admitted that he had actually fantasized about flattening an entire mountain range with a single strike before, but witnessing such power in reality was something else entirely. His expression hardened as he realized the gravity of the situation. He remarked that he had seriously underestimated what he had been up against when he had used just a simple thunder spell. The scene before him was proof that his power alone was not enough. His gaze shifted as he noticed the dark, ominous figure in the distance. He observed that the demon had been forced back, something that should not have been possible. Reflecting on what had just occurred, Xiu Xian's companion remarked that the dead demon had attempted to retaliate, but had ultimately been pushed back. He wonders if it came just to test their strength today. The scene shifted to a vast and magnificent palace. Xiu Xian walked along a grand hall, its imposing structure towering over him. However, he questioned aloud why such a grand hall was so empty. His curiosity was piqued as he scanned his surroundings. Suddenly, a golden light shimmered before him, catching his attention. His eyes widened as he saw an ornate, powerful-looking artifact surrounded by golden energy, before a gorgeous empress figure teleported to the throne. His system identified her as Li Wan, the empress of the kingdom. He recalls what Lu Yunshu told him before about the strongest bloodline and the strongest spell. She informs him about dragon speech, which is a spell that turned the tide in numerous battles. When the golden words are spoken, all living being must kneel. The regal presence in the room observed him carefully. Then, in a commanding tone, the empress in elegant robes demanded an answer. They declared that Xiu Xian had met them, so why was he not kneeling before them? Xiu Xian suddenly felt an overwhelming force pressing down on him. His body trembled as an intense, almost unbearable pressure descended, causing his vision to blur. His breath became ragged, and he instinctively brought his hands to his head, trying to withstand the invisible force crushing him. He realized in shock that this was an absurdly powerful suppression, something far beyond what he had ever experienced. He exclaimed internally that this wasn't just a simple difference in numerical realm stages. This felt like an existence from an entirely different dimension. As the weight bore down on him, he came to a realization. He thought to himself that this was none other than humanity's strongest individual. The sheer might emanating from them was overwhelming, almost otherworldly. The regal woman before him, observing his reaction, smiled in approval. She remarked that he was quite impressive. She acknowledged that Xiu Xian had walked the path of cultivation, had already reached the pinnacle of his current stage, and had done so in just 1 year. She continued, stating that even from the capital, she had heard of his name. However, she noted that despite all the recognition, Xiu Xian responded humbly that he was just lucky compared to his peers. With a composed yet commanding tone, she compliments his humbleness and she instructs him to rise and speak. As Xiu Xian stood, he heard her voice mention that she heard that the proud Grand Master Zhao Yuhui had accepted him as her new master. She tells him that when they had visited when she was young, they had seen Miss Zhao's father invite many renowned experts to be her masters, but she dismissed them all. Curious, the regal empress asked how he had managed to achieve such a feat. She wanted to understand the reasoning behind Miss Zhao's decision. Xiu Xian answered simply, explaining that he had promised her that he could help her raise a phoenix. Hearing this, the woman reacted with surprise, expressing interest in his answer. Then, with great authority, she declared her decree. She announced that Xiu Xian was now officially promoted to an assistant commandant within the Demon Suppression Division, and appointed as governor of Yizhou effective immediately. With an amused yet intrigued expression, she stated that she looked forward to seeing what other intriguing things he could accomplish. Xiu Xian respectfully accepts his promotion and withdraws from the hall. Left alone, a question arises asking why would Her Majesty favor someone like him? The Empress contemplates this as she watches the dragon materialize behind her. The dragon states with concern that the kid is suspected of killing his brother, mother, and father, describing him as utterly ruthless. However, the Empress acknowledges that there is no concrete evidence. She wonders if he had no choice. If he was oppressed for years and simply fought back, wouldn't he have become just another victim otherwise? Regret fills her expression as she reflects that if only she had realized her elder brother's evil intentions sooner, she wouldn't have had her spiritual roots stolen and her power diminished. Now, with demons repeatedly probing their defenses, she admits that she is hesitant to act rashly. She worries that once the grand demons realize she no longer has the strength to suppress the Demon King, it will only be a matter of time before the borders are breached. Meanwhile, Xiu Xian appears frustrated, realizing that his new position is far from what he expected. He exclaims internally that he thought it was going to be some cushy position. Instead, he finds himself sent to what he describes as a bottom-tier GDP border town. As he arrives at the gates of Yizhou, Wu Chenggun, appearing confused, asks what GDP means. He remarks that Master Shu has invented yet another phrase that common folk don't understand, expressing that following him is truly an educational experience every day. Xiu Xian responds by telling them to just call him by his name, explaining that it feels weird for them to suddenly change how they address him. However, Chenggun still replies with, "All right, Master Shu." As they continue, his companion asks why he didn't bring his disciples with him to see the world. Xiu Xian casually explains that they are all focusing on their own cultivation at the moment. The scene shifts to reveal a new location, the entrance to the Pig Demon Cave, an ominous place where Yi Qifeng stood. As Yi Qifeng ventures into the Demon Pig Cave, she explains that this place is a demon cage managed by the Demon Division. She states that it can only be unsealed under the division's command or with a decree given by the master. A golden token glows in her hand, signifying its power. Suddenly, the ground shakes violently, and the stone gate is pushed open. From the darkness, eerie sounds echo as a monstrous presence awakens. Glowing red eyes pierce through the shadows, and an intense aura fills the air. A terrifying beast, a massive demonic pig with razor-sharp tusks and an enraged expression, emerges from the darkness. It lets out a deafening roar, charging toward Yi Qifeng with overwhelming force. Yi Qifeng swiftly reacts, grabbing her weapon and slashing through the air, bringing the beast down, but the battle has just begun. She stands confidently before a swarm of demon pigs, remarking that she has arrived at just the right time. She then exclaims that it is time for her to restock, suggesting she intends to use this opportunity to replenish her resources. The demon pigs begin to attack, their terrifying squeals filling the cave. However, after a while, Qifeng manages to hunt them all down. A powerful force surges forward, spiked, mace stomps into the battlefield, crashing down with immense force. A deep voice mocks the demon pigs, calling them useless fools who are scared by a little girl. The speaker, a massive and imposing pig demon, steps forward. It glares at Yi Qifeng, standing tall with its grotesque, armored body. With a menacing expression, the pig demon sneers, taunting her by saying that she possesses a lot of resources. It then questions whether she truly thinks she can take them for herself. Yi Qifeng lets out a confident laugh and exclaims, "Ha!" She then declares that she only covets resources and that the pigs are not hers. The demon pig glares at her with its glowing red eyes, its expression filled with rage. It then growls and threatens that it will dissect her abdomen and carve out her heart to make an appetizer. Suddenly, the demon pig launches into a fierce attack. With incredible speed, it swings its massive weapon, unleashing a powerful strike that sends debris flying. Yi Qifeng quickly dodges, evading the devastating blow. The battle intensifies as the demon pig's spiked weapons spin violently through the air, creating a deadly vortex. The force of the attack shatters the ground, leaving behind deep cracks. The demon pig, frustrated by Yi Qifeng's agility, angrily exclaims that she is like a flea, dodging everywhere. It then questions whether she enjoys the battle, mocking her with sarcasm. The demon pig clenches its weapon tightly, declaring that if it were to do the same, she would be done for. It then unleashes a devastating spinning attack, generating a whirlwind of destruction. Yi Qifeng is caught mid-air, realizing the severity of the situation. The demon pig sees an opportunity. With determination, he exclaims that this is a great opportunity. At that moment, the demon pig's spiked mace comes crashing on the ground. The impact causes an explosion of force, sending shockwaves through the cave. It then stands tall, its red eyes gleaming, and declares that Yi Qifeng has put herself in the perfect position to become its whetstone. The demon pig's grip tightens on its weapon as its expression remains filled with arrogance and menace. Yi Qifeng could suddenly be seen holding the mace with her bare hands. She makes a move that catches the demon pig off guard. She throws the mace backwards and reaches for a smaller weapon, a concealed knife, swiftly drawing it with precision. The demon pig notices this and reacts with surprise, questioning why she has switched to an even smaller knife. It appears momentarily puzzled by her choice of weapon. However, the demon pig then admits that her strength has indeed surprised it. Despite its arrogance, it acknowledges her power. Yet, it then scoffs, reasoning that if her big sword couldn't harm it, then using such a small knife is simply ridiculous. Yi Qifeng's movements become sharper, her attacks swifter. She launches a flurry of rapid strikes, her blade glowing with energy as it slices through the air. The demon pig attempts to counter her attacks, but she remains relentless. The demon pig huffs in irritation and remarks that she is still just tickling it, implying that her attacks are nothing more than a minor annoyance. However, before it can finish its taunt, Yi Qifeng seizes an opening. With incredible speed, she executes a powerful strike, sending the demon pig reeling backward. Blood splatters through the air as deep, crimson wounds appear across its body and his arm is sent flying. The demon pig, now bleeding from its wounds, looks at Yi Qifeng in shock and demands to know why she is suddenly able to cut through its skin and flesh. Its expression is filled with confusion and disbelief. Yi Qifeng stands tall, revealing two blades in her hands. The demon pig exclaims in surprise, questioning why she is using two blades. She then explains that she did not rely on high cultivation to reach her current skill level. Instead, she states that she spent day after day working from dawn to dusk to hone her abilities. The demon pig, still reeling from the realization, asks her what she means. Yi Qifeng continues, clarifying that she does not have the talent to master techniques just by devouring books like her master, Xiu Xian. The demon pig, frustrated, demands to know what she is trying to say. Yi Qifeng then declares that after years of working and practicing at the butcher shop, she has finally become a certified master pig butcher. With a fierce expression, she prepares to strike once more, her blades gleaming with sharp intent. The demon pig, angered by her words, shouts at her to stop spewing nonsense. Its fury grows as it prepares a counterattack. With a monstrous roar, the demon pig's body surges with energy. Its muscles tense, and the ground trembles beneath it as it transformed into a huge boar. It then charges forward with full force, its red eyes blazing with rage. The power of its movement tears through the earth, sending debris flying in all directions. The attack is revealed to be its ultimate move, Wild Boar Charge. As the massive beast barrels toward Yi Qifeng, dust and energy swirl violently around them, setting the stage for the next clash. The demon pig crashes forward with immense force, its wild boar charge causing the ground to explode in a violent burst of energy and debris. The impact sends shockwaves through the battlefield. Yi Qifeng remains focused, observing the demon pig closely. She notices something alarming: its skin and flesh are getting tougher. As the creature continues its rampage, smashing through rock and stone, the cave begins to tremble. Yi Qifeng realizes that if this continues, the whole cave is going to collapse. The demon pig, with its red eyes glowing menacingly, charges at her again, tearing through the ground with unstoppable momentum. Yi Qifeng swiftly dodges, her body moving with precision to avoid being crushed. She narrows her eyes, and her vision sharpens. In that moment, she activates a special ability, allowing her to see every muscle and bone composition clearly. With her newfound clarity, she prepares her next attack. Energy swirls around her blades, forming sharp, precise arcs of cutting force. She executes her technique, Butcher's Blue Cleaver, Muscle Severance. The energy from her attack explodes outward, wrapping around the demon pig and slicing through its powerful hide. The creature lets out a pained roar as deep, precise cuts tear through its muscles with incredible accuracy. Blood splatters onto the ground as the force of her technique sends the demon pig crashing down, its body ripped apart by the surgical precision of her blades, leaving only bones. Yi Qifeng stands victorious amidst the remains of the slain pig demon. The system notification announces that the pig demon has been slain and that her realm has advanced to Imperial Chef. She takes a moment to absorb her achievement and remarks that it was a rewarding battle. The system interface displays her new rewards, including an Imperial Chef realm upgrade, some sound wave pig tusks, and nutritious fats. It further notifies Xiu Xian that the host's experience points have increased, advancing him to the small achievement of the 5th realm. Meanwhile, in a grand study, Sun Qian, the prefect of Yizhou, sits at his desk. He looks at his guest and asks Xiu Xian, what brings him to this remote region? Xiu Xian, seated across from him, responds that the emperor sent him to oversee the progress of reclaiming lost territories. Sun Qian furrows his brows and expresses his concern, asking why reinforcements have not been sent. He explains that it is nearly impossible to reclaim lost territories with just the local forces. Xiu Xian listens intently as Sun Qian continues, stating that he has voiced the same concerns to the previous prefects. He describes Yizhou's location, explaining that it is adjacent to the northern front lines, where the enemy forces, the demon pigs, previously rampaged and escaped into the woods when they were done. He questions if there is even a need to reclaim those lands when the residents have probably been slaughtered by the demons and they can't enter the woods with just a few men. Xiu Xian, skeptical, asks if Sun Qian has sent people to confirm the current state of the territory. Sun Qian sighs and explains that to confirm, they would need to cross the forest. However, doing so would mean confronting the pig demon leader, who guards the mountain. He describes this leader as extremely powerful, with high intelligence and terrifying combat ability. He emphasizes that engaging it would come at a great cost, making it unworthy of pursuit. However, Sun Qian shifts his tone and sarcastically suggests that if Lord Shu is confident, he is welcome to try dealing with it himself. His expression darkens, and he leans forward slightly, his eyes gleaming nefarially. He then remarks that he has heard of Lord Shu's rapid rise in position and assumes he must have remarkable skills. Xiu Xian responds by clapping his hands, giving a sign to his disciple to enter. At the entrance, a voice urgently calls out, "Master." Yi Qifeng steps inside, carrying an enormous boar tusk over her shoulder. A nearby official looks at the tusk in shock, wondering if it could possibly belong to the pig demon leader. Yi Qifeng, with a calm but firm tone, confirms that the pig demon leader has already been taken care of. The official, still in disbelief, exclaims that this creature was the guardian demon of the pig demon mountain. He expresses his shock, questioning how such a mighty beast could have been taken down by a little girl. Yi Qifeng, unbothered by his reaction, suddenly remembers something. She reaches into her belongings and presents an object to her master, stating that she found this letter inside the pig demon's body, causing the official's expression to distort unsightly. Xiu Xian holds up the letter and states that it is a secret letter. He tries to break the wax seal with his thumb, causing the observer near him to widen his eyes in nervousness. Suddenly, a golden barrier emerges from the letter, radiating a bright light and forming a defensive spell, causing Xiu Xian to throw it away. Yi Qifeng, standing nearby, asks what the object is. Xiu Xian explains that it is sealed with an encrypted spell and will require a special incantation to break. Yi Qifeng then inquires what they should do next. Xiu Xian responds that they will take it to her senior sister, Yuhuan, later to see if she can decipher it. Xiu Xian turns to the official and asks, since the demon pig has been defeated, shouldn't he already be able to verify the situation now? Stammering, the official agrees hesitantly. Meanwhile, outside a fortress, soldiers march in unison. The official, looking at them, remarks that Xiu Xian had insisted on coming along himself, so he should not blame anyone else if something happens. Deep in the wilderness, Xiu Xian and his group walk through the forest. One of the soldiers mentions that they have been walking for a while and suggests taking a break. Another offers Xiu Xian some water, but he firmly refuses, exclaiming, "No." Sitting down, Xiu Xian appears deep in thought. A soldier next to him, trying to offer some food, asks if he is hungry and offers him some butter chicken. Xiu Xian firmly declines again, saying he is fine. The soldier concedes and stops insisting. Xiu Xian states that both the victims and the butter chicken are positioned correctly. He observes that they had intentionally made him sit in that specific spot. Looking around, he notices a formation in the distance, realizing that a lot of people are positioned in the forest ahead. He then declares that all the soldiers around him are here to kill him. Xiu Xian watches as a group of soldiers approach through the forest, surrounding him. One of the soldiers speaks, stating that since Xiu Xian has already figured out the situation, there is no point in acting anymore. Another soldier receives an order through a notification, confirming that Xiu Xian is to be eliminated. One of the soldiers suggests that Xiu Xian should just jump off the cliff himself and not make things harder for them. Xiu Xian refuses, firmly stating that he does not want to. Another soldier, visibly angered, begins to speak, exclaiming that he is courting death. He draws his sword intending on taking Xiu Xian down. In an instant, Xiu Xian moves with incredible speed, unleashing a powerful seal with golden energy. The explosion of energy stuns the soldiers, halting their movement. Xiu Xian, with a sharp gaze, speaks with disdain, questioning how the so-called elite of the State Defense Army could be so utterly disgraceful. He accuses them of throwing away their dignity and even resorting to killing their own people. Xiu Xian then questions if this is the same way the previous prefects had all died. The soldiers, now enraged, shout an order to kill him. As the soldiers charge forward, Xiu Xian swiftly moves, cutting through their attacks with precise strikes. The soldiers attempt to overpower him, but he effortlessly dodges and counters their attacks. His speed and skill leave them struggling to keep up. Xiu Xian continues to fight, deflecting their weapons. As he moves near the edge of the cliff, one of the soldiers notices and shouts that Xiu Xian is at a dead end, urging the others to push him off. One soldier lunges forward, attempting to force Xiu Xian over the edge, but Xiu Xian's eyes glow with a menacing red light as he channels his energy. His entire body is enveloped in a dark aura, crackling with power. He unleashes a powerful technique, his voice resonating with strength. A massive force erupts from his hands as he executes Force Palm. The sheer power of the attack creates a powerful windstorm, sending debris flying in all directions. The force of the impact tears through the air, its energy visibly distorting the surroundings. The ground trembles as the shockwave rushes forward. A soldier watches in shock, his face filled with disbelief as the devastating attack crashes into the landscape. The energy slices through a massive tree, splitting it apart with violent force. The impact is explosive, shattering everything in its path, and leaving behind utter destruction. Amidst the chaos, soldiers are thrown backward, their bodies crashing into the ground with heavy force. Blood splatters as they are overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of Xiu Xian's attack. One soldier, struggling to regain his footing, stares at a figure before him. His eyes widen in realization as he stammers, barely able to believe what he sees. He exclaims that the person standing before him is not Xiu Xian before soon falling to his death. Turns out, it was Yi Qifang disguised as Xiu Xian the whole time. As the dust settles, Yi Qifang stood in the midst of debris and corpses wondering how her master is doing on his end. A system notification appears, confirming the increase of experience. Meanwhile, Xiu Xian, dressed in black, leaps off the cliff, arms spread wide, descending into the vast forest below. Sparks fly as a blacksmith's hammer strikes metal with force. The clanging of metal echoes in the air, and the heat from the forge radiates outward. A young woman, dressed in work attire, continues hammering away with precision. The text identifies her as Tai Sanyang's apprentice. She pauses, momentarily wiping sweat from her brow as she glances toward the distance. Her gaze lingers, observing something or someone approaching. Nearby, an old woman kneels on the ground, her body frail and trembling. A masked soldier, clad in dark armor, looms over her menacingly. His stance is rigid, his tone harsh as he yells at her. He demands to know who gave her permission to eat the buns. His voice is filled with disdain and cruelty. The old woman, struggling to keep herself upright, pleads desperately. She explains that she was merely hungry, that her body has grown weak, and that the heavy labor has taken its toll. She says that her strength has failed her, and she could no longer endure the hunger. Her voice is shaky as she begs for understanding. However, the masked soldier shows no sympathy. He coldly states that in this refugee settlement, those who can't work shouldn't eat either. His voice carries an unyielding sense of authority. The old woman, with tears in her eyes, desperately reasons with him. She explains that her body simply cannot keep up anymore, that her arms and legs can no longer bear the burden of work. Her voice is filled with sorrow as she expresses that she wishes she could, but physically, she is unable. The soldier sneers at her words, showing no remorse. He proclaims that the weak and worthless should be sent to the pig demons as snacks to fill their bellies with. His voice is chilling as he delivers the cruel verdict. A demon pig, standing nearby with its glowing red eyes, lets out a snort. It appears to be amused by the situation. The soldier, unfazed, continues speaking. He declares that if she cannot work, then she will be sent to the pig demons right away. His voice is filled with a cold finality. The old woman, realizing her impending fate, panics, pleading for mercy. Her voice shakes as she begs him to spare her life. The masked soldier raises his hand, ready to take her to the pigs. Before the hand can reach, Tai Sanyang's apprentice intervenes. Her voice is firm as she demands mercy for the old woman. The soldier pauses, momentarily caught off guard by the interruption. His eyes narrow as he turns his attention to the young woman. With determination, she steps forward and makes an offer. She states that she is willing to take over the old woman's work. Her voice is strong as she bargains, requesting only 2 extra buns a day in return for her labor. Her expression is resolute, showing no fear. The apprentice tells the old woman to sit down, addressing her as Granny. Her tone is gentle but firm. The old woman, visibly relieved, thanks the young apprentice, expressing deep gratitude for saving her life. However, concern fills her voice as she points out that the apprentice is already working at the forge. She wonders if taking on more work would be too much and states that the task may be too difficult for her. The apprentice, however, reassures the old woman. She says that she has extra strength to spare and tells her not to worry about it. The old woman, despite being saved, sighs. She wonders when they will ever escape this living hell. There is a heavy sorrow in her voice as she speaks. She states that every day, people die and that their corpses are tossed to the demon pigs to be eaten. Her voice is filled with despair as she reflects on the grim reality of their situation. She then wonders if the court has abandoned them. The apprentice, maintaining a hopeful outlook, tells the old woman not to worry. She reassures her that as long as she is alive, someone will come to save them. A large insect-like creature observes the scene. It identifies the apprentice as a blacksmith. A thought crosses its mind. If it takes her as its apprentice, she could forge weapons for him. From a high vantage point, a large encampment comes into view. The area is vast, surrounded by mountains, and heavily populated with prisoners and workers. Xiu Xian continues its observation. He deduces that the troops sent to rescue the people have joined the demon's side. He realizes that this place has already been turned into a facility for the pig demon clan. He notes that all the refugees have been imprisoned here, forced to create weapons and prepare supplies for their captors. The insect watches a red flag flutter in the wind. Its presence signals authority over the encampment. Inside a large tent, a massive, muscular pig demon with red eyes sits. It is identified as the clan chief of the pig demon clan, Xing Lai. He sits in a relaxed manner, overseeing the camp. A human man, dressed in formal robes, addresses the pig demon. He refers to him as Lord Pig and informs him that the battle preparation is proceeding smoothly. The pig demon, Xing Lai, responds with a confident smirk. He acknowledges that the plans are going well. However, he reminds the human that, as per their agreement, once the city falls, all the refugees will be given to the pig demons for consumption. The human, identified as Governor Cao of the Beagle Basin, nods. He speaks in an indifferent tone, confirming that those lowly refugees belong to the pig demons now. He adds that they can consume them however they like, raw, roasted, or stewed. Xing Lai chuckles darkly, mocking the greed of humans. He remarks that humans are far more heartless than demons. He states that if it weren't for their skin differences, he would have thought they were the same species. Outside the camp, Xiu Xian makes a resolution. It determines that it must deliver this information to Yi Qifeng as soon as possible. A scroll is unrolled, revealing an urgent message. It states that the prefect of Yizhou is conspiring with the refugee blacksmiths to stage a rebellion. It warns to keep an eye on him and to apprehend him immediately if he is discovered. Yi Qifeng, holding the scroll, furrows her brows in frustration. She questions why her master keeps writing horizontally instead of vertically. She sighs, thinking to herself that she has reminded him so many times that dynasty missives should be written vertically. As night falls, the moon shines brightly in the sky. A figure, the same young woman from earlier, moves swiftly and cautiously along a rocky terrain. Below her, she sees a group of people as being escorted under the dim glow of torchlight. Their shadows stretch long across the ground as they are led into a dark tunnel. The granny turns her head suddenly, her swiveling in nervousness and fear. Seeing this, the young woman, now desperate, exclaims in alarm. As the captives are marched forward, one of them asks in confusion where they are being taken. Another prisoner responds, stating that the captors said they were being let go. Doubt begins to spread among them. A woman questions why, if they were being released, they are tied up and being forced into a cave. Fear creeps into their voices. Someone hesitantly asks, "Are they really going to let us go?" From the shadows, a red-eyed pig demon watches them, its expression unreadable but ominous. The granny, sensing something is wrong, steals a glance toward the demon. Her expression shifts to one of deep unease. As the captives step further into the cavern, a chilling sight unfolds before them. A massive pit filled with bones and corpses comes into view. The skeletal remains of countless victims are scattered across the ground. One of the prisoners, upon realizing the horrifying truth, screams in terror. A sharp blade slashes through the air, cutting deep into one of the captives. Blood sprays across the ground as the victim collapses, their body limp and lifeless. With a forceful push, the corpse is thrown into the massive pit of bones. The body plummets down, disappearing into the dark abyss. A loud crack echoes through the cavern as the body lands violently among the scattered remains below. Bones splinter and break under the weight of the new addition to the grotesque pile. A demon pig tears her clothes and hangs her corpse along with others. The red-eyed pig demon watches with a twisted satisfaction. Its snout wrinkles as it observes the slaughter without a hint of remorse. One of the pig demons, its voice deep and commanding, orders that the remaining captives be dragged away and slaughtered cleanly. It instructs that the carcasses should be sent to the refugees, while the fresh meat should be delivered to the boss. Another pig demon, its eyes gleaming with cruelty, adds that some of the best quality meat should be set aside for the human officials in the capital. One of them scoffs, mocking the humans for eating their own kind. It chuckles darkly, stating that regardless of race, the weak will always become food for the pigs and dogs. A pig demon recalls that their boss mentioned keeping this as leverage will allow him blackmail them when they attack the capital. Another pig demon grumbles in annoyance, questioning how many people were killed that day. One of the guards responds that only one more prisoner needs to be dealt with, and then they can finish up and leave. He swings his sword down, intending on finishing the old lady. The blacksmith charges forward, her movements swift and precise. With a resounding impact, she collides with the granny, forcing her away from Dranger. One of the soldiers, eyes wide with shock, exclaims that the blacksmith is here. His tone is laced with disbelief as he watches the scene unfold. The young woman drags the granny, begin to retreat. She urgently shouts for the other to run, their footsteps echoing as they flee. The white-haired granny, her breathing ragged, turns to the blacksmith. She says that dragging her along will only slow her down, and if this goes on, all of them will be caught, so she should forget about her and run. After a brief pause, the blacksmith narrows her eyes and makes a decision. She suddenly kicks off the ground, preparing for a fight. The pig demon soldier, his expression twisted with fury, roars that the blacksmith is looking for death. As the blacksmith swiftly bypasses his attack and grabs his arm, immobilizing him. The pig demon, taken aback, stares at his wrist. His red eyes widen in shock as he exclaims that the brat actually grabbed his wrist. Before he can react further, the blacksmith spins her body, using the momentum to punch him in the stomach. The pig demon's massive form is lifted off the ground, his body whirling through the air. One of the soldiers watches his companion flying through the air, his voice filled with surprise, exclaims that the little blacksmith knows martial arts. His stance shifts uneasily as he grips his weapon, clearly underestimating her before. Without hesitation, the blacksmith lets out a fierce battle cry, lifting a massive boulder above her head with ease. Her strength, honed through years of blacksmithing, surges through her arms as she hurls the boulder straight at the demon soldier. The pig demon's red eyes widen in shock as the enormous rock crashes down upon him, shattering upon impact and sending blood and debris flying in every direction. As the dust settles, the blacksmith breathes heavily, realizing the extent of her own strength. She then turns to the granny and, with a small, almost amused expression, remarks that she never thought her strength from years of smithing would be so useful in a fight. She chuckles to herself, saying that all that ironwork wasn't for nothing. The granny stares at her in silent awe. She thinks to himself that this girl, turns out she can fight. Suddenly, shouts echo through the battlefield. One of the enemy soldiers, his voice laced with urgency, yells that a human has infiltrated and called for backup. Another soldier immediately follows up, shouting not to let them escape. The blacksmith grits her teeth as she looks ahead, her gaze darting between the many figures now moving toward them. She exclaims in frustration that there are so many of them. Her focus sharpens as she spots the old woman nearby, still vulnerable amidst the chaos. Without hesitation, she shouts for her to run, her voice filled with urgency. As the blacksmith turns to flee with the old woman, her eyes suddenly widen in alarm. A dark silhouette stands in the distance, its posture imposing. A pig demon soldier, realizing the danger, immediately commands the figure ahead to stop the fugitive. The blacksmith's breath catches in her throat as she stares at the approaching figure. A blade gleams in the dim light, gripped tightly in the soldier's hand. The atmosphere grows tense as she prepares herself for what's coming next.